You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
The Centresteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners. This is the Centresteer Podcast, the first Land Rover podcast on the planet. Centresteer is a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners. Welcome to show number 65 for August of 2018. I'm your host, John Costage. I'm a bit east of the second most livable city in America, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Joining me via Skype from their respective locations are Harold, Morgan, and David. Welcome, gents.
Hey.
You do that
Thanks
on purpose,
for having me back.
Yeah, I'm here at Channel Mute.
We're trying to get Michael on the show, but he was supposed to join us. Not sure where he's at. David's kind of sitting in for Michael, I guess. David is with ROAV, and you'll hear from him later about the upcoming MAR 2018 rally taking place in Western Virginia. Not West Virginia, but Western Virginia.
Well, that would be southwestern Virginia, actually.
Our guest this month is Graeme Aldous of the first Overland DVD fame. He was our very first guest and talked about producing the first Overland DVD, so you can hear about that. Check back in one of the original shows we did. He's back this time to talk about his latest video after Overland.
I believe that was episode 10 when he was on originally.
Oh, was it that? Okay. I
believe it was.
I had a lot of prep for the show today, and I didn't have time to check on that.
I could be wrong, but I think it's 10.
A very special thanks to our Patreon patrons. Your support really does help us, especially with domain management, website hosting. Go out to patreon.com/Centresteer for all the details. And thanks for your comments, follows, likes, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and email. I'll read you a couple that we had over the past month or so. This one's a long one from Australia, so I may skip some of it. Dan in Australia. Hi, guys. Long-time listener. Love the show. I'm a happy owner of two Landies, a Disco 2 Luxo Barge Spec V8, a strong, reliable pavement princess that I've had for quite a few number of years. The other is a 300 TDI 110 Defender with almost 300,000 kilometers on the odometer there. It's always managed to get me home, though I can't complain too much. I purchased it a couple years ago for long touring trips around Australia and doing some heavy off-roading. I'm sure I don't need to tell you guys how unbelievably good it is at doing these things. There was also a couple of short-lived flirtations with a Disco. We've all done that. A Disco 1 and a Series 2A, but for some reason or another, those didn't work out. Greetings from Australia. I was listening to your last podcast when I heard you mention Brian, Small World. I'm from Pakenham, Victoria. He said the H is optional. Where it is about 20 minutes from Gembrook. Gem is a gemstone, by the way. Brook was fine. Brook, okay. I don't think I get the joke. Given that you mentioned there's only a couple of listeners from Australia, it's quite a coincidence that we've flipped the page. Probably seen each other on the road before, possibly even met, as he does seem to chat with a lot of Land Rover owners. So good work on the podcast. Keep it up. I'm getting around to supporting you guys on Patreon. We appreciate that when you do at some stage, and maybe once a Defender reaches 300,000 kilometers. So he said, thanks. Dan, there's a PS here. He sent along some videos of his Defender playing around in bog holes. And no, I don't do that bog hole stuff with it anymore. So thanks, Dan. Appreciate the email. There was, and then I had another.
That was a long one. That's a lot to have to read upside down.
There was you got me. Okay, now that joke I got. Like the next day or within the same 12-hour span, there was another message from another Australian, and I can't find it now. I'm not sure if it was Instagram or Twitter, and I lost it. So whoever that other individual was, I apologize for missing your listener mail.
Perhaps it slipped into Dan's bog hole.
From over Facebook. Dear Centresteer, just wanted to say that I have... I got to start that one over. Dear Centresteer, just wanted to say that I have just started listening to you, and what a brilliant podcast you put together. Thank you, Stuart, UK listener. And then he had a PS, loving episode 60 and 61 with Alan Bennett and Tim Slesser. And we appreciate that. I think those are outstanding episodes. Absolutely.
Our quintennial extravaganza.
Another FB or Facebook message. Hey guys, Jeep owner. Love all topless solid axle.
Thank you. Come back next time.
4x4s would love a Landy, but the price out of my reach. Listening to you guys has been very informative. My question, is this Series 3 the perfect example of rotted bulkhead? And he sent some pictures. The answer is yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I shared that with with Morgan, and he's like, yeah.
And Morgan should know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
All too well.
Finally, a Twitter message from Twin J Dunn. Another great show this month. Didn't hear much from you guys. Your guest sure could talk. And that was the Malcolm episode. I'm Malcolm Nance. I'm restoring a numbers matching 1991 110 high cap right now, thinking if I ever come to sell it, I should look for a buyer in the U.S. I would say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's a good way to make money.
It's a very good way to make money. 130s and high caps are worth their weight in gold almost over here.
To celebrate, that's the end of listener mail, by the way. To celebrate the 70th anniversary of Land Rover, the Centresteer podcast is holding a giveaway, and we're coming to the close. So we would like you to post a photo or a short video of you toasting the Wilkes brothers, preferably on Instagram. You can be near Land Rover. We'd just like you to say thanks, Maurice and Spencer. Happy anniversary, Land Rover. Something like that. Words to your effect. Words of your choosing, excuse me. English language not necessary. We kind of like other languages. That'd be kind of cool. Because it is Land Rover does have worldwide appeal. If you don't have a Land Rover, borrow one, take a picture from an Alloy and Grit magazine, hold up a little car model. Be sure to
go to a car park and pick a random Landy and stand in front of it. That works too.
I like that. That's a great idea. Just be sure to hashtag your Instagram.
Ooh, that sounds like a new competition, a random Landy photo fest.
It does. It's a great way to meet Land Rover owners at also parking security.
All right. Hold on. Let's finish this contest first. Be sure to hashtag your Instagram post with hashtag WilkesToastLR70 and tag the Centresteer podcast and Alloy and Grit. So the giveaway is going to run through September 7th. So it should still give you plenty of time by the time this comes out. We're going to select 3 winners randomly.
Yeah, you'll have 6 days.
No
plenty of time.
No pressure. Well, you've had 2 months, and that'll be 2 months and 6 days. 2 winners will receive a 1-year subscription to the Alloy and Grit magazine, and 1 winner is going to get some SNX 891 swag. I have a mug and some stickers to send you. Go, please fill out and do our 70th anniversary Centresteer podcast giveaway. And now, on to the news. Bad month for Tata. It was a bad July. Global sales fell 5%, and Land Rover sales were down almost 22%. And although I will give you a little heads up that in America, Land Rover sales were up, but Jaguar sales were down. So Tata reported a 5% decline in global sales, including JLR, which fell 21.6% in July. And JLR sold 36,144 units in July, and the global sales of its commercial vehicles and Tata Daewoo in July were 40,000 units, which was 29% higher than a year ago, excuse me.
Do we know the Range Rover versus Land Rover breakdown in the U.S.?
No, I don't think we have that.
Really?
Yeah.
Michael's been slacking off.
I need to switch over to that article. I was looking for my highlights for global sales, but unfortunately the highlights have disappeared. I don't understand why it does that to me. So in the U.S., JLR reported July 2018 sales. Land Rover had its best July sales month with 6,209 units, an increase of 5% from July of 2017. Jaguar sales, a 41% decrease from 3,100 units in July of 2017.
Ouch.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like Jaguar hasn't had very many good months on this side of the pond anyway.
And that's even with bringing an SUV into the picture. You thought?
Well, I was going to say another typical month, up a bit for Land Rover and down a bit for Jag, but 41% is more than a little bit.
Yeah, especially when their numbers were already so low. That's a big drop. Imagine that, part of the issue with Land Rover being down outside of North America, I would assume is related to a lot of the European upcoming diesel regulation changes.
It's not just the diesel. The diesel was part of that. Another article here, and I'll read this sentence for you. This is from the Gulf News, which I think is in the Gulf. About half the loss was because of China. This is the global. Now, this is global sales, so this relates to the global downturn for Tata. About half of the loss was because of China, where lower margins and declining prices weighed on performance. China's import tariff cut earlier this year, ironically, added to the pressure, pushing prices across the market lower and causing buyers to delay purchases. So apparently, let me read the rest of it, then I'll go back. Elsewhere, JLR struggled with high sales incentives in the U.S. market, the loss of love for its predominantly diesel cars in Europe, and the impact of Brexit in the UK. So it's not just the diesel thing. You've got some issues here in the U.S., you've got the Brexit concerns, and then apparently there's some in China. Reading the rest of the article, or another one that I saw, sounds like JLR's having problems pricing their vehicles in China, where they're not getting the right price structure yet. The Chinese really like luxury, large foreign vehicles, and I guess they're having difficulty getting the right price for them to get the right price. And then I guess these tariffs were reduced, but apparently since the tariffs came down, prices came down, and Land Rover, I think, dropped the price of their vehicles as a result, but that didn't seem to stimulate sales.
Yeah. Might almost work in reverse because it becomes less exclusive.
Right. That could be it. So there's some concern, but Land Rover seems to be doing well in the U.S. still, doing okay in China, but the home market is not doing so well. So moving on, Land Rover announced it's going to change its architecture, the framework that it uses for vehicles. They currently have, I believe, like 6 different frames and chassis that they use. And then they're going to introduce 3. So they're going to introduce 3 models over the next 5 years, and they're going to switch from a modular longitudinal platform (MLA) and where they use the 6 platforms in total. Which there's one that has the Range Rover Sport, and the Discovery together. Another platform has the Jag XF, XE, F-Pace, and the Range Rover Velar. The D8 platform is used by the Evoque, Disco Sport, and the E-Pace. The Jag XJ, F-Type, and I-Pace all have their own unique platforms. So there's there's 6. And I believe they're trying to get down to this MLA. They are moving to the MLA. There's 2 platforms. I was confused on them. Oh, no, they're going to the PLA. I don't know, the PTA, the Premium Transverse Architecture. Again, my highlights didn't save. I had all this all mapped out. I did all this work, and now the highlights aren't there. So the shift to the MLA platform reportedly begin in 2020, which means it may align with the highly anticipated replacement of the Defender. The MLA platform is very flexible because it's going to be used for mild hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and fully electric vehicles. So they're moving ahead to that. And in the interim, they're going so they're going to the MLA. They're going to modify this other architecture to be PTA. I don't know that really particularly matters. But the PTA will have a plug-in hybrid and 48-volt mild hybrid models like the Evoque. Think that these changes will help JLR lower its production costs and simplify its entire lineup for the future.
So it sounds like they're going to one platform which uses a transverse drivetrain for the smaller stuff, and then this longitudinal one might be adaptable for multiple wheelbases.
Yes, that's a good way to look at that, yes.
Also kind of sounds like they're getting out of the car business.
Well, that's very possible. So another article here going through these changes. JLR will roll out the all-new Defender, the new I-Pace, super luxury J-Pace, and a more road-biased Range Rover all-road EV as the 4 new models. As they're moving to this new architecture, they're also going to be rolling out new models, and they believe that the Road Rover is going to be one of them, in addition to possibly having Defender have more than one model. It's not clear, because I don't think anybody knows. It's not clear, maybe Jerry does. It's not clear whether that means...
Jerry thinks he does.
I'm sure it's not clear if that means that the different wheelbases, like we're used to, will be different models, or if there's going to be a Defender, maybe a Defender Sport, or a Defender Velar, or something. You see where I'm going there. It's not clear whether that's what they mean by having these multiple models.
Crossing my fingers that I'll like the new Defender.
Well, interesting with
I'm not holding my breath for that.
Along with these changes, one of them, they're going to bring in some other technologies. It's part of this discussion that they had. They apparently went to the Tata board, or maybe it was the JLR board, and explained all the changes coming up, and they had a press release. So other technologies available with the new transverse engine architecture is the see-through bonnet that was debuted a couple years ago. Looks like that's going to come up soon on the new Evoque 2, and they're going to put that the first time on that model.
So interesting. Seems less useful on a transverse, because a transverse you can bring the front end so far back and down relative to the windscreen. It's not as necessary as on a longitudinal.
Yeah, and I would think on something as small as an Evoque that I would hope that you would know where the nose was. Haven't driven one yet, though.
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that that's the next model up in the rotation for change. I just think that's the impression I was getting. Also, we've talked about this before, but this is some clarity. JLR will open its first assembly plant on the European mainland in September in Slovakia. It will start with production of the Discovery with a capacity of 150,000 vehicles a year. Defender production may be added later, reports have said, although JLR has not confirmed this. So there's apparently a big discussion as to where the new Defender will be built, and if the, which I think support, if it does do that, and it goes with where the Discovery is, it supports our contention that the Discovery chassis is going to be the basis for the Defender chassis.
Yeah, and it supports my contention that all the operations in England will be Range Rovers, and you'll split into two companies, Range Rover and Land Rover.
Another article here, every Land Rover to be renewed by 2024. I mentioned some of those before. First out of the block will be, in this new era, will be the all-new Range Rover Evoque, which will include in its lineup a highly economical plug-in hybrid version. And the new Evoque will have a heavily modified version of the current steel platform, but the new strategy could eventually see it being on an aluminum platform. And for those not in America, aluminum.
Well, and that certainly makes sense if they're moving towards plug-in hybrid vehicle even further.
Oh, big time, big time. Yes, that's definitely the case. And there was something here. Yeah, the Evoque Eco Champion will be a plug-in, which uses a 300V, so I assume that's volt, hybrid setup.
Yes.
Setup coupled with a new 3-cylinder Ingenium diesel engine.
Finally, they're getting it. Put a diesel in the PHEV.
Exactly.
This, says JLR, exceeds the new Chinese standard for new energy vehicles, which car makers are clamoring to achieve due to the huge sales potential from China's desire to lead the world on electrified vehicles. The new Evoque structure and transmission families will eventually be transferred to the Discovery Sport and the Jag E-Pace. Disco Sport will be the second model to transfer to the PTA platform, and which is the Sport is currently the best-selling Land Rover, I believe, of all time. So you're in good company there, Michael. Changes afoot in the frames, chassis, platforms, however you want to look at it, that will harbor new vehicles, including a bunch of vehicles to be updated and changed. We've got updated Evoque coming. We'll have a little more detail on that in a minute. I think Disco Sport's going to be updated. Some article, I don't know if it's later in the rotation here, but said that the Range Rover, full Range Rover, they're pushing that out a couple years for a refresh. And
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they want to have, the Defender and the full Range Rover and the full-size Discovery on similar platforms on the longitudinal platform.
And I saw some mention here, and a lot of these articles kind of ran together, and of course my highlights have gone away, so I can't find it, but that the thinking is that the Defender would be, the new Defender is going to be debuted at the Paris show this fall.
Amsterdam.
Well,
come on.
Well, great. Please.
You'd have to wait until March, though, next year, right?
Hey, that's going to happen anyway. It's not going to happen this fall.
I don't know. All indications are it's going to happen this fall.
Yeah, all indications were that it was going to happen last year, and that didn't happen either.
Well, I think with this change in platforms, I think that might explain some of the reason for the drawn-out Defender change.
Or just another excuse to stall a little bit longer.
You're going to like it, Harold. You're going to like it.
Yeah, okay, Jerry. Whatever you say.
One of the articles said that the Road Rover concept was going to happen, but that it was not going to be called the Road Rover, and this was early in the month of August. And then there was another article later in the month of August that said that JLR had applied for the Road Rover name trademark. So not sure what's going on there, whether they're going to use the name or not.
I'm guessing they won't use the name because they can't seem to come up with a design that's ugly enough to match the heritage of the name.
Perfect.
Yeah, they're definitely using Road Rover in their internal communications, so that maybe that's a reason why they're trademarking it. Not sure. It is to be but the Road Rover, whether it's called that or not, is due before 2020. The name, and they think this is Autocar says the name could still be used for the first production EV, which is due before 2020. It will be a premium electric model aimed primarily at markets such as the U.S. and China. The first Road Rover is understood to be a Mercedes S-Class rival in terms of outright luxury, interior craftsmanship, but with some all-terrain capability. The car will be tuned for impressive on-road dynamic performance, taking advantage of potential delivered by the electric motors.
Well, I certainly hope that when they release it, if they do, and if they release a faster sport model, that it's the Land Rover, Range Rover, Road Rover, Roadrunner edition. That's okay. It was grown.
They'd run afoul of FCA on that one.
Yeah, I think so.
That's true.
Especially if they tried to use the actual Roadrunner beep beep horn.
Now, somehow I don't think Jerry would allow that.
There could be some co-branding, but yeah, I don't think Jerry would allow it.
Although it looks sharp in purple,
Oh, very true.
You get the right shade of purple.
like plum crazy.
Yeah.
So that's Land Rover kind of general businessy news. Something that this is a Daimler article. I only highlighted one thing in here that I brought it up.
Daimler or Daimler?
Yes.
They're two different companies.
This is Daimler.
Right. They're spelled the same.
They're going to split business into cars, trucks, and mobility units. They have 700 subsidiaries in 60 countries and will be realigned into 3 entities.
That would be Daimler.
The reason I mention this is because unveiled a corporate structure designed to give trucks, mobility services, and Mercedes-Benz car division greater scope to chase growth in an era when car makers prepare to launch fleets of autonomous cars. And that's why I saw that and thought that was highlighted. Just this mention about fleets of autonomous cars that we don't talk about that too often. But autonomous cars, something that's coming. And to need to be prepared for or aware of, certainly.
Begun the Clone Wars have.
And I read a Reddit quote somewhere recently, or a survey that said something like 64% of people in the U.S. don't want automated vehicles, that they'd rather drive.
I don't believe it.
Sounds like one of those made up stats, but
even if it's peer reviewed, and I still don't believe it. For the average day commute and transport and getting around, I think people will take to it very quickly and very easily.
The only reason I could see for having an autonomous car is if I was a regular Uber user, because I really can't deal with people, so that would be the way to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of the people who are already using public transportation or something, it's probably going to be out of their price range, but it's going to be much more convenient than owning your own vehicle and dealing with maintenance and all of that. I think it can take off.
I think it will take off, and I see cities getting bigger because you can be out further. Public transport, I think, actually has some concern. Maybe not the trains, because I think that the cost there is going to still be lower. But busing, what do you need a bus for if you can have roving cars that come pick you up at your house? You don't have to walk to a central location, take you right to your office door or to shopping or whatever you need, or you're going to.
Well, I would think actually it would make some sense if these autonomous vehicles could be linked up like a train, and then the car would split off when it makes its turn, and it becomes a mode of public transport.
That's.
I think that makes a lot more sense than privately owned autonomous vehicles.
And that's certainly being looked at and worked on. That stuff's definitely being looked at.
And I think more of the electronic or autonomous vehicles, especially the electric ones, they are looking at basically small buses and such for early implementation. So I think, it may actually just be a situation where public transportation becomes automated first.
Yeah, hi there. Welcome to Johnny Cab.
Yep.
Exactly.
I still contend that 18-wheelers, large trucks, will be the first major autonomous vehicles for 2 reasons. One, that's a known quantity, and there's so much safety and security and regulation around it for the driver. And the second reason is they have a hard time in the U.S. finding drivers. There's a shortage of drivers. And
and this country runs on trucks. It just becomes a road-going rail train alternative, basically.
Yeah, definitely. That said, there has been a fair amount of pushback from the unions to try to preserve those jobs, what few of them there are.
Yeah, the Teamsters still have a fair amount of muscle in this country.
Yeah, especially in, trucking, shipping, stuff like that. But it also may end up, I think one of the articles I read said that they were leaning in the direction of still having drivers, but have them be more assistant monitor technicians, essentially. And that could open up for more jobs because you don't necessarily have to be able to drive the vehicle yourself if you can just take over when necessary to essentially pull it off the road or something.
They become more like the conductors on a freight train.
Right.
And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not going to be workable. That's going to be fine for the experienced driver who, for maybe 5 or 10 years, because you want to have him keep his job towards retirement, and that's what he did. I have no problem with that. That makes sense to me. But younger drivers, replacing them, they're not going to have the skills. They're not going to develop the skills if it's take charge at the last minute. There's going to be very few of those people that'll be able to handle that kind of activity. You need someone who's seasoned, drives all the time, to be able to take the wheel after 10,000 miles of driving. Then there's an emergency that a human could handle with.
Right, but maybe on the other hand, if you view this as a way to phase out all these existing legacy drivers, we'll call them, by the time they're all retired and gone, maybe you don't need new drivers because the technology has matured to the point where you don't need that person.
Right.
And maybe at that point you are actually hiring more technical staff who are used to the newer computerized electronic method. They may not be drivers, they might be technicians or something.
Right, but I think what I'm trying to say is that the technology is going to take a long time to fully mature, and while I think you need that supervision, because no matter how much you safety test it and prove that it's safe and that sort of thing, once you put it into real deployment, it's still going to have glitches for years to come. So you have that supervisor on board, but maybe by the time it's mature, you won't need those anymore.
Right.
All very possible. We could continue to debate. I disagree with some of your thoughts, which is fine. But that gives us,
well, of course you do.
That gives us fodder for the podcast. Yeah.
I'd be shocked if you agreed with everything I said, John.
Indeed. Yeah, technology just moves too quickly, and I think those issues that people have will be overcome very quickly. A computer is still safer and better mile per mile than a human. Yes, there are certain situations where a human will probably do better, but over time, you're still going to be better with a computer. But anyway, we'll continue to discuss. We'll see what happens. We'll certainly watch this space. Moving on, JLR aims to axe a lawsuit over timing chains here in the United States. And I don't have access to, nor do I want access to Law 360, so I only know a little bit. But apparently there's a proposed class action lawsuit against the company for concealing a defect in the timing chains of its vehicles. JLR says that a single repair for a lone plaintiff doesn't justify nationwide class claims.
Jag's had a number of problems, and I suspect this comes from Jaguar because Land Rover's been using their engines now for 10, 12, 14 years now, something like that. But the AJ-V8 had a notorious problem with timing chains and timing chain tensioners for a long time, and even multiple iterations of their engine got better, but there were still problems, and I think this comes from that.
Before the article stops, it just says alleged defect in the timing chain assembly of a 2012 to 2014 Jaguar Land Rover vehicles equipped. ...
Right. Yeah.
So that's all we.
There's some weaknesses there, but I think that maybe somebody's trying to capitalize on, like you said, a lone incident and trying to turn it into a class because of the earlier generations having all of these problems.
In upcoming models, the 2020 Disco Sport has been seen. There's been spy shots of it. It's going to get a mid-cycle update that was originally introduced in 2016. An early tester has been previously spotted wearing modified front fascia with new intakes added and existing ones enlarged. Autocar reported Friday, whenever this was from.
What's the development camo look like?
It is interesting, but it's only in the front, Harold. So it's only the front clip really, where it's not over the whole vehicle. Yeah, you would be underwhelmed.
I think that would make a really good coffee table book, by the way, of development camos of the world.
I like that. Autocar reported that Land Rover is planning more substantial changes than your typical mid-cycle update. And it's part of the automaker's plan to offer electrified power in all models by 2020. While there should only be evolutionary changes on the outside of the Disco Sport, Autocar said to expect major improvements in interior design to better rival popular newcomers like the Volvo XC60, which is one of the best interiors in small SUV segment. We'll probably see Land Rover introduce its latest infotainment system featuring multiple screens, which first appeared in the Velar. I know that their entertainment system it's panned a lot. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, the entertainment system has always been pretty behind the times.
It's apparently very slow to respond, and I see that a lot.
They don't go fast.
No, it doesn't respond quickly. Next generation Evoque Spied climbing curbs at the ring. So the Evoque 2, says it's supposed to look a lot like the Velar after spending a few moments underneath the shrink ray. The updated Evoque will skirt the line between a refresh and a whole new generation. Underneath the overhauled design, you'd like this one, Harold, by the way. This has a complete whole entire skin camo. That's a lot of swirlies one. I like the... Ooh. Yeah. I'd like the other one better on the Disco Sport, but this one is the whole vehicle with a bunch of swirly. Underneath the overall design, the model will continue to ride on a revised version of the existing platform that will feature a wider track, a longer wheelbase, 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder will reportedly be available to power the SUV. Later, mild hybrid powertrain will combine a 3-cylinder 1.5-liter power plant and electric motor that will also allegedly join the powertrain range. And there will also be supposed to be a plug-in variant. Inside, SpyShot showed an updated cabin. The infotainment screen sits on top of the center stack. Lower down, the knobs of the HVAC controls feature digital temperature displays. The instrument panel display is largely the same. Photos showing retaining analog dials, which are quickly fading out among other premium vehicles. And it's reportedly supposed to arrive in 2019 as a 2020 model. And it looks like they're not sure about the convertible, but as you know, the 3-door variant has been cut.
That makes sense to cut the 3-door. I'm actually a little surprised that they're planning on widening the wheel track and lengthening the wheelbase a bit, because that just brings it closer to the full-size Range Rover.
Unless it's in preparation to the move to the new transverse platform.
That's very true.
It could be. And I think it might have something to do with the electrification modifications coming up.
That actually does make sense.
And moving into reviews of current models, the Goodwood test of the 2018 Land Rover Discovery Sport. Since David was on the show, I saw this and thought we could chat about it for a few minutes. You still with us, David?
Oh, yeah, I'm still here.
So the Disco Sport, now the Goodwood Road and Racing, it's, reading this, it's kind of all posh and polish. They don't.
The Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Yeah, but they don't say. They try not to say too much negative, but if they do, it's couched in nice words. But they're testing a 2-liter diesel, which replaced the old 2.2-liter diesel version for 6 months. This is in the HSE specification. Generally a good-looking vehicle. The Disco Sport is right off balance of snazzy stuff, LED donut lights, split color roof, and black gloss wheels, has sober practicality. Has telltale big buttons for the off-road system and plain black leather everywhere. They had the highest level of trim, bunch of USB charging points. They had the 2,245-pound entertainment pack, which gives you the Meridian digital surround system with 825 watts, 16 speakers, Wi-Fi hotspots, the navigation, which isn't so much COP. I don't know. It's not a British phrase I'm used to. They'd rather have CarPlay and use Google Maps. The 2-liter gave them about 35 miles per gallon in a mixture of town and motorway driving, about 5 more than the same engine in the larger Discovery. It is not the perkiest or quickest 2-liter diesel. It does have 240 horsepower, and the optional magnetic dampening system is a family load lugger. Again, in a family load lugger, it's a dispensable luxury at 840 pounds. Popularity, you have a golden calf of manufacturing a model that's selling as fast as it's built. The Disco Sport is more utilitarian sibling of the shiny urban Evoque, which has sold equally quickly. They generally like it. Once a Landy fan, always a Landy fan. Price is tested, £51,000.
Wow.
Hey, so John, I can attest, tie a couple of your articles together. Yes, the Disco Sport Land Rover infotainment system is a bit slow and clumsy. And I've used vehicles with the CarPlay on it as well. And the CarPlay is, as much as we love Land Rovers, CarPlay is a much better system. So yeah, I can definitely concur with those findings in that review.
Yeah.
So save your money on the option and do something in the aftermarket is what you're saying?
I don't know if you can get an aftermarket or save your money on that option. I mean, it's pretty much built into the heart of the vehicle.
Okay.
There are aftermarket stereos, for lack of a better word, that you can buy that do have CarPlay in them. But I think you could do it, Harold, but I'm not sure replacing what you would replace and where, getting it plugged in. I don't know how that. So
works. It might be an ugly conversion, is what you're saying.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, and these days they're not using as much in the way of like your standard DIN or double DIN stereos, and they're really highly integrated with the dash plastic fascia and everything itself. So some of the
trying to discourage you from getting something better that you like in the aftermarket and kind of strong arming you into paying the money for the optional stuff.
Yeah, and there are companies that manufacture new dash plastics to support DIN and double DIN and larger screen third party stereo systems and entertainment systems, but usually they don't come out for 5 to 10 years after the vehicle is released.
And Harold,
good point. Yeah.
And
good
Harold,
point.
To be clear, this is the entertainment system they're talking about is the optional upgraded system. So it's not like they're trying to get you to the base model is crappy, and then buy the another 1,000 pounds will give you a better system that works well. This is the better system that they're.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not worth the extra money because it's not that much better than what comes in the base model.
That's my understanding. Unless it's the same.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Although it might be the same throughout the whole range, but everything I hear about this infotainment system is it's just not. It doesn't work well throughout the entire Land Rover range. It's just very slow. The thought is they need a faster processing chip. You touch something on the screen and it may take a couple seconds to respond, and you're expecting faster reaction.
Well, yeah, I actually still prefer to have an engine that I prefer to listen to than a stereo. With the right engine, you don't need a radio because you're too busy listening to the engine.
And so, David, how long have you had your Disco Sport, and what's your thoughts as a review?
It must suck getting old there, John. You can't remember anything anymore. Mine for about a month, and so far for the month, it's I think someone called it a pavement princess earlier. It's been a very nice daily driver. Very, very good so far. A couple little quirks with it. It's been back to the dealer for warranty maintenance one time, but they seem to got the problem fixed. So overall, 1 month in, pretty pleased.
Good. How was fit and finish?
It's I'm certainly expect it to be. It's pretty well put together. I mean, you saw it today. It's pretty clean looking inside and out, and I'm pretty happy with all that. It's a lot better than the series.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And its road manners and capability, do you feel like it has enough power to accelerate and merge into traffic?
Oh, yeah. I've got the four-cylinder Ford Ingenium engine in it, and it's north of 200 horsepower with turbocharger. And you put your foot down, and you'll find the horses there. It'll squirt you through traffic pretty quick. It's pretty fun. I'm kind of scared getting too much into it, because I'm afraid the blue lights may show up behind me.
But by comparison to a series truck, it's got to be phenomenal.
Hey, I drive a V8 Stage 1, brother, so it moves pretty well.
Yeah.
But by comparison, this probably is better.
It's a lot better. But it's smooth and quiet. I mean, I'm driving right now. I don't know if you can tell or not.
Not really. You can hear some air noise, but I assume you have the doors closed and the windows up, right?
Oh, absolutely. Air conditioning on, climate control, infotainment systems turned in. It's all dialed in tight.
So are we talking to you via Skype through a Land Rover infotainment system?
That's right.
Wow, very meta. All right. Well, thanks for the owner review.
And here's an update for you. The world headquarters of ROAV is no longer in Caroline County.
We're somewhere around Lorton now.
The 2018 Land Rover Discovery review. This was a roadshow. Did a review of it. I'll just read you the good, the bad, and the bottom line. Good driving manners on pavement, excellent off-road capabilities, and stature that slays. The bad, In-Touch infotainment system is unreliable and doesn't offer smartphone integration.
It doesn't go fast.
Those who want to play in the dirt will need better tires. Bottom line, the Land Rover Discovery is a fine choice for both on- and off-road shenanigans, but be prepared for infotainment frustrations. See?
And it's funny that they mentioned the tires, because I don't think I've ever bought a new vehicle that I wanted to keep the stock tires. Certainly not for any off-road use. But then again, was it Nigel who we had on a few months ago who went through the Land Rover Experience program in Manchester, Vermont, and used the stock tires specifically to show that it could be done, and it did very well.
Sure, it could be done, but it could be done better with better tires.
A lot better. But it is just funny to hear a review where they say if you want to go in the dirt and mud that you should get new tires, because that should be a no-brainer.
Right. Well, and don't forget, they put those tires on as a bias towards road activity and getting better gas mileage. That's
right. And keeping costs down.
Some specifics here in their review. This Discovery came with a supercharged 3-liter V6, like the one in the... Oh, if you don't go diesel, your Discovery will come with supercharged V6. They got a diesel in their test one. The engine produced a stout 304 horsepower, 332 pound-feet of torque, paired with a smooth shifting 8-speed automatic transmission. Land Rover says this powertrain will get your 4,800-pound Discovery to 60 miles per hour in 6.9 seconds. Though if you want to achieve the EPA estimated fuel economy rating of 16 miles per gallon city, 21 miles per gallon highway, and 18 combined, you'll need to be more conservative with your right foot.
See, that's so funny. I actually have a 3-liter V6 in my 1993 Nissan Pathfinder that's my daily driver right now. And engine technology has come a very long way.
Yeah, I'm betting that Pathfinder won't do 60 in 6.9.
It will not.
I don't think it'll do 60, period.
0 to 60 in 6.9 hours?
Depends on how far I want to go into redline while, shifting. But I can get 18 on mine, no problem. I'm still always a little shocked by the estimates.
What does your vehicle weigh? Is it less
it's still got to be around mine's usually fairly loaded with recovery gear and equipment, so it's got to
and yet it's probably good bit less than the 4,400 pounds of this Disco that'll do it in 6.9.
Yeah, indeed, I agree. It's got to be less than 2 ton.
I'm guessing you're probably really asking a lot to expect 200 out of the power numbers.
Oh, for mine?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No.
I think you're probably around 175, 180, somewhere in there, versus the 300, 330 out of the Disco.
And mine is naturally aspirated, so obviously add on some of the extra features and the turbo, you'll have a little bit of fuel economy loss, but it should be easy to maintain 18 miles per gallon in that vehicle.
I've actually seen fuel economy numbers go up with the addition of a turbo. It's a fallacy to think that it's automatically going to go down, because the reality is if the engine doesn't have to work as hard, you get better mileage.
Yeah, and especially when you toss in like an 8-speed automatic, it's going to be able to handle that much better.
But it'll be in its most efficient power band more often.
Exactly.
So if you're looking to, especially in America, you're looking to purchase a new Discovery, I'd suggest checking out this Road Show article, because they discuss what maybe you would want and not get on that said vehicle, their tested vehicle. I'll just read you the line here. It says, while a base Discovery SE starts at $52,000 American, my fully loaded tester stickers for a much more expensive $82,700, including a $1,000 destination charge.
For a Disco.
Yeah.
For a
diesel
Disco.
The feature set in that fully loaded one is probably light years ahead of of what we're used to for Discos.
Well, yeah, right. They said that adds the capability package, which gets him the 2-speed transfer case, air suspension, terrain response 2. He says to take the Drive Pro package to get some adaptive driving systems, spends $700 on a tow hitch, to take advantage of the diesel's 8,200-pound tow rating, and he likes the cooled center storage compartment. And he says, all in, I won't get as much in the way of luxury, but I only spend over $60,000 instead. Plenty of money left over for some rugged tires. So the one they got was $82,000, and his suggested version of the Disco kitted out to $60,000, then go buy some good tires.
And all that money, and I bet it doesn't come with the three Amigos.
No, sir. No, sir. Well, and if it does, it would take a long time to see them because the infotainment would take a while to respond.
There you go.
Thank you. JLR, a Classic, extends work support for North American customers. So good news. JLR Classic is going to continue its worldwide expansion with new premises in Savannah, Georgia, its first facility outside Europe. New facility, scheduled to open in the summer of 2019, will support owners and enthusiasts of collectible classic Jaguar and Land Rover vehicles out of production for 10 years or more. 75,000 square foot refurbishing, restoration, sales, and servicing facility will create more than 75 highly skilled full-time jobs.
That is actually news that I was not expecting to hear anytime soon, but I'm elated to hear it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think I saw one article said those jobs may be somewhere like $80,000 a year in salary, which is nice. So
yeah, I should hope so.
So it's going to be a state-of-the-art 42-bay workshop capable of providing a full range of work services for classic Jag and Land Rover vehicles out of production for 10 years or more, from vehicle health checks to full restorations. A purpose-built showroom will offer a relaxed environment for showcasing a selection of pre-owned Jaguar Land Rover Classic Works Legends for sale. Now, what I want to know is they say out of production for 10 years or more. Does the whole family, a.k.a. Defender Series, have to be out of production, or is it a specific model? So like the Series 2, or excuse me, the Discovery 2, if it's out of production for 10 years, does that get covered, or do you have to wait until Discovery's all out? I'm assuming it's by that specific model, but I just wanted to be clear, and that's not clear to me.
Yeah, I mean, I would have the same assumption that you do.
Right, so when the Disco 2 is after 10 years after Disco 2, that would then be covered. So Disco 1s would be covered because it's certainly been more than 10 years.
Disco 2s have been out of production for 14 years. So.
Exactly.
Oh, it's right. 2004, right? Oh, wow.
Yep.
Oh, geez. Okay. So,
time is a-flying, my friend.
Ain't it? So that would cover all series, certainly North American Defenders, Range Rover Classics, P38s, Disco 1s, Disco 2s.
Gray market Defenders, too, as long as they're in legal import age.
And Freelanders.
And Freelanders.
Thank you.
Oh, speaking of Freelanders, I drove by Taylor Congleton's shop the other day, and there was a pretty nice little Freelander sitting out front.
I can't imagine anybody in this country being crazy enough with their money to want to take a Freelander to the Classic Works, though.
Yeah.
All right, so this next article is really good from Auto Classics, and it's a good one to read. Who owns the very first Land Rover? So exactly 70 years since JUE 477, the first ever production Land Rover, rolled off the Solihull production line, Enos, I assume that's how you say it, I-N-E-O-S, Automotive, has been confirmed as the new owner, and there's a sympathetic restoration in the works. So I'm going to read this article. This is by Callum Brown from Auto Classics. It's worth reading the whole thing. Following a near-secretive unveiling at the prestigious Royal Automotive Club in Pall Mall back in February, Land Rover Chassis 860001, that's 0001, the very first production Land Rover, has drawn worldwide interest and all manner of questions. Where has it hidden away all this time? Why is it still why is it in such a condition? You may have seen this one. This is the one that looked like it was crushed in the middle and kind of collapsed. The frame collapsed in the middle. When was it last on the road? All those questions can be found here. There's a link. Yet one question has been unconfirmed. Just who bought and now owns Chassis 860001? You may have heard of Enos, a privately owned multinational chemicals company headquartered in London. As CEO and founder, Jim Ratcliffe has not only been declared Britain's richest man, but also waged war with Land Rover over rights to the Defender. Unable to acquire the legal rights to continue Defender production after Solihull wrapped production in January 2016, Ratcliffe has been planning his own 4x4, known as the Enos Grenadier, through Enos Automotive, established in 2016 with the aim of supplying a fresh perspective on the off-road market. Mr. Ratcliffe has been a huge Land Rover aficionado for decades. It therefore comes as no surprise to discover that the UK's wealthiest gentleman acquired the first production Land Rover some time ago. Isn't HUE 166 the first Land Rover? Rolling off the Solihull factory production line on July 27, 1948, JUE 477 lays claim as the first production Land Rover. Not to be confused with HUE 166, Land Rover's kept first example. HUE 166 is actually the first of a batch of 48 prototypes. UE has a chassis number of LR1, but it is still a test vehicle, not the first production Land Rover as properly claimed, rolling out of the factory on March 11th, 1948. So to step out here, HUE was produced on March 11th, 1948, which was several months prior to JUE 477 being produced in July of 1948. So HUE is part of that test vehicles, the 48 prototypes, whereas JUE, which I think you wanted to say. So
that's a pre-production vehicle.
So right, yeah. Hang on, he actually says it in the next sentence that it was below the picture here. HUE may be the oldest surviving Land Rover, but it is not chassis number 1. JUE 477 is chassis number 86001. Therefore, it is undoubtedly the oldest production Land Rover. There's more to the article, but that's the basics I wanted to hit you with. They then talk about how JUE is going to be restored and what they're going to do with it. Thought that was good to there's all this discussion about HUE 166, and then where did JUE 477 come into play? So to boil it down, JUE 477 is the first production Land Rover, and HUE 166 is one of the first batch of the 48 prototypes produced before JUE 477.
Right.
Huey was on site at the Amsterdam Auto Show to announce the new vehicle. So.
Yes. Right, because wasn't that April 1st of 1948 or April something in there was in April 48, so that make a lot of sense. It was produced in March, taken to Amsterdam, and then in July the first production rolled off.
Yep.
The largest the largest Land Rover convoy record set in Northamptonshire. A new world record for the largest parade of Land Rover and Range Rover vehicles has been confirmed. A convoy of 908 vehicles completed a course at the Billing Off-Road Show near Northampton, but strict rules dictate how close each vehicle must stay to the one in front, and Guinness said just 640 qualified. This still beats the previous record of 632, which was set in Bavaria, Germany in May. And organizers said they were pleased that the title was back in the UK. So
the hard part's keeping that many of them simultaneously running.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's why
because one of them stalls, you get a break in the line, and then they don't qualify.
Exactly.
The vehicles had to stay a maximum of 9 meters or 29.5 feet, about the length of two cars, from the vehicle in front for their participation to qualify as a valid attempt. Now, I assume that convoy doesn't have to be rolling. That's not clear here. Is it? Can they just be stopped? I guess
if they're not moving, it's not a convoy.
Yeah, they have to be at speed.
So, but it never says here. It doesn't say that had to be at, that it was at some sort of speed, and it doesn't say, over what distance. Is there a guy just standing at a gate, and then he determines how much space is between them? Is that the deal? And then theoretically, as soon as one vehicle is larger, has a larger space than 9 meters, then the whole show's off, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think we, what's his name from My Land Rover Has a Soul? I remember him describing the process and how painful it was to try to keep them all together at rolling at speed.
Yeah, it's kind of too bad you couldn't chain all the bumpers together, but I guess that would be cheating.
Even then, it might not work.
Well, maybe.
Land Rover Legends 2018 at Bicester Heritage. There's a nice 2-minute, 5-second video that we'll post for you that was from the Land Rover Legends show, and they get to see all the cars, and it's a nice little well-produced 2 minutes. So it's an event coverage of that inaugural show, and looks like it's going to come back. And you'll see a lot of the trucks that we've talked about here in the show. The Trans-Africa truck. You'll see Tim and Adam up on stage. You'll see the first Overland truck. And there was one more that stood out to me, and I can't think of its name. But you'll see that all those are in this video.
Do you see the Centresteer sticker on the Oxford truck?
You do not. They film it from the opposite side, and there's some other stickers, but you don't see ours.
Okay.
Incredible Land Rover on 2 wheels set speed record at Goodwood.
Which 2 wheels?
It looks like the two that touch the
right-hand 2 wheels.
The two that touch the ground.
Yeah, okay.
I like that better. But yeah, it's what is it, about a 2-minute video, and you can watch a Range Rover. Is it a full? It's a full size Range Rover. Or was it a sport? It was tough to tell.
It was either a sport or an Evoque.
No. It was
I think it was a sport.
No, I think it was a sport. And they pops up on 2 wheels on the right side of the vehicle, and has to go through some curves and up a hill. And apparently that's the biggest challenge that no one else had made before, and he was able to make it up the hill and sets that record for 2 wheels, a 4-wheel vehicle on 2 wheels.
Now, is there a special setting on the terrain response that lets you do that?
I believe you are correct, sir. Yes, there is the there's the, what do they call that pop up on the side? What's the 2 wheels?
2-wheel.
Yeah, but is there a phrase for that when it's like popping a wheelie? But I guess it's like popping a wheelie but on the side, isn't it?
Driving on 2.
Driving on 2. There we go.
I was watching the video, quite interested to see how that worked. I don't know whether they had to have a special software patch or something to basically lock everything down.
I don't think so. I suspect he was just going on instinct.
You'd need locking front and rears, I would think, to do it.
If you listen to the commentary, there's one point when he comes around a slight bend and is, I think, going up that hill, and there's a wall on the left-hand side. In the commentary, the one gentleman says, "I hope he doesn't touch the wall like he did the last time." So I suspect that he tried this over several attempts, and that was the one that made it. So it sounds like it wasn't just like one attempt did it.
Yeah, they had several attempts. He had done an attempt previously in the day and had just barely tipped it over enough to put the wheels on the wall. So
it takes a certain amount of skill to drive on too.
And he had to do the hill climb in under 2 minutes to set the speed record. So it was quite impressive to watch.
The hill climb is a special. That's the add-on for that deal.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Other than that, I'd have to say the best exhibition of 2-wheel driving that I've ever seen was at the World's Fair in '86 in Vancouver, and they had the Russian national stunt team. They officially worked at Vaz, but they were stunt drivers. They got it up on 2. There were 4 of them in the car, and there was the driver. And then the other 3 climbed out onto the high side of the car, took one of the wheels off, opened the trunk, swapped it with the spare that was in the trunk, and changed the tire while it was up on 2.
Wow!
And then got back in before he came back down.
Damn,
that's insane.
That is insane. Yeah.
It's very popular in the Middle East for them to do the driving on 2-wheel stunt, but obviously they're generally just driving on very long, straight, flat roads. So the hill climb and
they got a couple of those over there.
That's true. The hill climb, he even had to go through some S curves and a tunnel, so it was impressive.
Wow.
Land Rover Defenders are being pulled over by police, and drivers are happy about it. So this is taking place in the UK. Operation Tampering, which is running this summer, has been welcomed by 4x enthusiasts because they say the police are finally doing something about 4x4s being stolen, specifically Defenders. So police are pulling over drivers to check that the person behind the wheel is the owner and not a thief, following a spate of Defender thefts. And folks seem to be happy about it. At least 40 Land Rover Defenders have been pulled over by Staffordshire Police as part of Operation Tampering, and officers have found each vehicle was being driven by its rightful owner.
Well, that's good news. Yeah, I had a completely different thought when you introduced this story, because I'm thinking about in this country where it's not so much about Defenders being stolen, and it just went to my mind that it's actually an honor in this country to get pulled over for speeding in a series truck.
Indeed. Gordon Ramsay purchased a Land Rover Defender used in the Bond movie Spectre for £200,000, and it was pretty cool. So it was nice to hear that Gordon Ramsay's a Land Rover fan, and they think he spent about $200,000 on this one. There were, I think, 10. Oh yes, this is one of 10 bespoke vehicles made for the 24th Bond film. This one was only used for drive-bys, so it's in really good shape. And he now owns it, and he's had a bunch of pictures and video on Instagram. He's very excited about his purchase.
So he got one of the ones that hasn't been dropped out of an airplane or shot at, then, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Because those are the only ones I might be able to afford.
Indeed. This one, in the description of the vehicle, I guess in the brochure, said that the Spectre Defender we have here is presented in perfect condition, having only been used in drive-by scenes. It is UK road registered and has been driven just 894 miles from new. Accompanying the car is a range of papers documenting filming schedules and the high-end parts used in its construction.
Very nice.
Good
I remember when the Skyfall Defenders got sold off for pretty high price, and every single one of them had been smashed up pretty badly.
Right, right. So thanks to Gordon Ramsay, keeping some Land Rover heritage going.
Yeah, it's funny how you use a Land Rover in a Bond film and it becomes more valuable even though it's been totally destroyed. And on the other hand, you use a Land Rover in a Jim Carrey movie, an Ace Ventura movie, and you can buy them things cheap.
I'm just upset with the Bond films. It took them so long to use Land Rovers in their films.
Well, you got me there, definitely.
Yeah. So this is this is not a news article, but it's a company called Road, and they are a self-funded private limited company who have developed a forward control cab to replace the body of a Land Rover Discovery. So it's pretty cool.
Excellent.
A very cool concept.
Do they ship to the U.S. and how much?
I didn't see that part. Rotodama Rediscovery. Make your Land Rover Discovery a super utility vehicle. Uses this fantastic base to create a recycled vehicle ready for second life. Working for you. Tube frame cab delivers excellent operator protection for the roughest environment. Bonded panels are inset to protect them from knocks by default and can be easily replaced if needed. A forward control seating position provides the best view ahead and is fantastic for accurately placing the vehicle wherever your work takes you. Moving the occupants forward also delivers an amazing payload space and over 1 ton carrying capacity. Don't delay. Transform and save your Discovery. Order a cab or provide a donor vehicle for us to transform for you today.
Yeah, I like that you can buy the kit or you can get a full vehicle converted for you. So
well, buying the kit would be a way to make it happen in this country.
Exactly. And they say that once you remove the Discovery body, it should take about a day of shop time to put the cab on. And
For sure, yeah, just a day. All you got to do is put it together.
It's easy. Yeah. It's easy.
Yep. But you should be able to put a whole bunch of those cabs in, shipping containers.
All right, get on it. And finally, Land Rover did another marketing cool video called The Land of Land Rovers. And it's a cool 3.5-minute video. It takes place in Nepal. If you haven't seen it yet, because it came out, it came on August 7th, but I haven't seen a lot of it played. But this journey to, I'm already going to say it wrong, Mahani Bana Jang, the place where all roads meet deep in the Himalayas, and discover why this remote village in the sky is known as the Land of Land Rovers. It's all series trucks, really very well done. I think, aren't they? They're all.
I think they're all series ones.
Yeah, they are all series one.
Even
there's like 45 of them or something like that in this little area.
They've been using them for like 50 years, and they're traveling up this narrow path to this town or village. It's up in the mountains that doesn't look over the Himalayas. It looks at the Himalayas.
It looks down at the Himalayas.
Yes, that's called Sangdafu. I looked at it on the map. They don't. Google Maps does not show any roads going to that town.
And no roads required.
Yes, indeed, sir. Indeed. So
I think the best part about that little video, my favorite part, is where I think it was the woman who was saying that people ask us where we're from, and we say we belong to the place where we have the Land Rovers.
That was such a great explanation.
Right.
I would love to be able to say that.
And they're in good shape. They're all series ones, and there is an accompanying video which I found with this, where a younger woman, she had used it looked like not a stage one. What's the lightweight? Looked like a lightweight, but then I think they gave her a Disco 5. Because I don't think she bought it. They gave her Disco 5, and she drove that up to that mountain, and so they show a little bit of that. I think that's in a companion video to that one.
They probably thought it was some kind of alien spacecraft.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the video was when they were interviewing one of the young drivers. He said that he always picked the oldest of the Land Rovers because it was the simplest and easiest to maintain and drive.
I believe that was the 57 Series 1.
I think so.
So check that out. Well, if you haven't already, it's really cool. It's 3.5 minutes. That's called The Land of Land Rovers. And now on the Centresteer podcast, it's our MAR 2018 preview. Joining us from some random car park, some parking lot, I think in the Commonwealth of Virginia, is David Short. David Short, welcome back.
Hey, John. How's it going, guys?
Fantastic. So you're with ROAV, Rover Owners of Virginia, and every year you hold the MAR events, which is the very first proper Land Rover event I ever went to back in like 2003 or 4. And podcast are making a return to MAR this year, and myself and hopefully the Fort Pitt Land Rover group will come back. But tell us about MAR 2018.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so as you said, I'm the president of the Rover Owners Association of Virginia, or ROAV, and our club sponsors an annual fall rally that's been going on since 1975, and that's the Mid-Atlantic Rally. This year's Mid-Atlantic Rally is from October 4th through October 7th. That makes it from a Thursday to a Sunday, and registration is open. It's a good event. You can go online to www.roav.org, and you can look at all the details there about the wheres and the whats and the whens. But basically, this is it's a great rally. We have all types of Land Rovers show up down in Giles County, Virginia. We always look forward to blend some of the heritage Rovers and some of the contemporary Rovers, to use your vernacular. But yeah, Rovers old and new, we all come together. We all share our enthusiasm for the brand and the mark. We got trails for people to go out onto that would satisfy the newest of trucks and also the most built and capable of modified trucks as well. We've got a couple vendors that are showing up. I think our friends from Alloy and Grit will definitely be there, and they'll be showcasing some of their fine things. I got a couple other vendors that are coming as well, and a couple things that I've been sworn to secrecy on I can't tell you about quite yet. And it's just going to be a good time, a good weekend in the South Mountains of Southwest Virginia, and hope I can see everyone there.
And Giles County is where again?
It's in the southwest part of Virginia. It's the nearest landmark would be Virginia Tech near Blacksburg, Virginia.
Okay.
It's a small farming community. It's about 4 to 5 hours southwest of Washington, D.C., which is the trip I make. It's closer to the 5 hours because I make the trip in a series rather than the 4 hours in a regular car. But yeah, that's about where it's at.
Nice. Yeah, for us, it's almost a straight shot south through West Virginia to Western Virginia. I think it's probably about 5 or 6 for us from Pittsburgh. If I'm not mistaken, You're sitting in a Land Rover. Am I not mistaken?
Oddly enough, totally unplanned, I am at exit 104 on I-95, which is the Caroline County exit, which is the site of a previous MAR. I'm about 1 mile from a previous MAR site.
That was the Beanfield MAR, right?
That is exactly right, the soybean field.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, I'm coming to you from the Rover Owners Association of Virginia International Headquarters, the front seat of my new Discovery Sport.
And coincidentally, I just happened to be down in the D.C. area on Monday, a couple days ago, when we're recording this, and ended up meeting David for a beer and got to see his wonderful Disco Sport, which is nice. But let me tell you, it looks like all the other cars on the road. I know we complain about this all the time, but it was not distinctive. I'm sorry, David.
No, hey, I'm getting 25 to 30 miles per gallon. I'm comfortable. It's replacing my Honda, so it's doing its job.
That's true. Yeah, and from what you told me about that Honda, you did very well. That Honda was about to fall apart.
Anytime you can get out of a Honda and into a Land Rover, it's a good day.
I can't badmouth the Honda. The Honda did me well for 14 years. I hold on the cars for a really long time, like probably a lot of other folks do.
Well, it's hard to badmouth a Honda, but you certainly can't goodmouth one either, though.
Yeah.
They're just road-going appliances.
Point made.
You can't goodmouth one. Okay. There's a chance for a show title.
Except for that one Honda in the 90s that was really a Land Rover.
Well, there would be that, and I'm looking for one of those.
No, I haven't seen one in a long time.
I would accept just the pieces of one. I'll take a Disco and make a Honda out of it. The same way they did.
That's what they did.
Exactly.
Reeb just put different badge on the front. What did they call it? Do we remember?
Crossroad.
Crossroad, crosswind, cross.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. It was short-lived.
Yeah, I think it was just a year or two, and certainly not available anywhere but the home market, I think.
So, David, Mars coming up, and what's anything special you can tell us? You said there were secret things, but come on, there's got to be something.
Well, I mean, every year our fine sponsors from Rovers North, they'll be conducting their RTV road course down on the lower part of the field. That's always exciting. Everyone gets to go test their driving capabilities through the little cane course. We've got, like I said, Alloy and Grits working on being there as well. I know Les Parker from Rovers North. He's going to come. He's retired from Rovers North, but he's going to. He called me the other day, and we spoke for a short while. He's always an exciting character with a lot of stories to tell, a lot of expertise to add. Loves talking about Rovers, and he's bringing remote control Land Rovers, little toys, and he's hoping to open up an RTV course for kids, which that could be a lot of exciting. So it's a kid-friendly event. We always enjoy that. Lots of vendors will be there, and like I said, John, you said you were coming and hoping to do something with the show. I'm not sure if Harold or Morgan will be able to come down, but we really appreciate these guys coming down too. Can you tell me what the Centresteer is going to do down at the Mar?
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot.
Well, we're going to show up. Maybe that's all we can promise at this point, right?
Yeah, David and I did talk a bit about it and trying to come up with some ideas. I think something will happen. We will be there, and we'll have stickers, and we'll talk to people. And if we had an idea or two, maybe around the RTV, maybe talk to the winners, maybe interview them after the concluding of the event, or maybe just maybe talk to people randomly at Mar. Maybe set up a table.
That radio-controlled RTV course sounds interesting because I just happen to have an RC Disco 3.
Oh, look at that. Les had a Defender, so you could take the Disco 3 and challenge the Defender, and you can have a little race-off. That could be
there you go.
That could be cool.
There we go.
Of course, my Disco is still stock. It hasn't had any significant, two-stroke upgrades or anything.
Well, you got time,
which would
Harold.
make it cool.
You got a month, Harold. You got time.
Yeah, because I have nothing else to do in my life.
Exactly.
Except do things that I don't get paid for and end up putting money into. Yeah, I'll get right on that.
There you go. So I have not been to Mar at this location. So what should I expect? I'll use this opportunity to get a better understanding of the site. Is it near a river? I'm used to the old Mars that were along the James River. Is there a similar situation?
Not exactly. We are near the New River. We used to be located near the James River, but now we're near the New River. But before we were on the James River, and trucks got their tires in the James River.
I was going to say that site was in the James River more than on it.
And I did camp on that island a couple times.
Sometimes if the weather was bad, we were in the James River. You're exactly right. Mar stands for mud and rain as well. That's a different little joke we've got going on.
That's true.
Can
attest to that.
But we're in a farmer's field. It's called Wheatland Farm. It's on some high ground, so it usually stays dry and it stays okay. We've got a big top tent like we always do, a big central gathering spot. People do primitive camping all through the field, and we've got little porta potties in case you have to take care of those things. But it's a good time there. If you are not in the primitive camping crowd, there's hotels around. The problem this year is because we're so close to Virginia Tech is playing a home football against some school called Notre Dame or something like that. I'm not really sure who they are.
Sounds French.
So all the hotels are booked up and been booked up for months. You have to kind of get a little farther out away from the main brands of hotels to find a room if you're in the hotel set. But if you look around and make some calls, there's some stuff available. You just got to travel a little bit further out. That's where we camp. Now, we're right on U.S. Highway 460, and right across the highway is a mountain heading up to, if you're familiar with Mountain Lake Lodge, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But on this mountain, we don't own, the club has access to the property there, and we've got several miles. I can't even begin to tell you how many miles. It's 21 different unique trails on this mountain as it draws down to the bottom, and there's main pass that's good for stock vehicles, and there's some crossway passes that are good for modified vehicles, and there's some insane spots. There's the Boggs Rock Garden, and there's a couple other places that are just really for the trucks that like to really test their metal, or aluminum, if you will.
So nothing you own, John.
No, John's Defender, the Oxford Blue little Defender he's got, that would go well, easily go on, no damage, no problem at all.
No.
We've got there's, in addition to the mountain, there's over 8 miles of fire roads which kind of go up a big around the whole mountain, and there's a big old fire tower lookout up on top of the mountain you drive up to and take a look see at. And Jeff Aronson took an Evoque on that little course a couple years back, and it only suffered minor damage. So John's Defender would be able to do it fine, no scratches, barely get mud on the tires.
No.
Nice
Not until he finishes paying for it.
And that's between you guys. I'm not involved.
Yeah, exactly. Not until.
So you get a chance to drive, the camping, primitive camping. Everyone kind of hangs out together. We've got the big top tent, which is our big central social venue. And then across the way, we got all these different trails, and it's easy, moderate, hard. And if it rains, which it usually does, the trails become just immeasurably more difficult, and so it really tests your mettle. But the fire roads remain passable all the time and easy for any stock vehicle. So we've got all kinds of options and outs depending on what the weather gives us. So it's a real flexible type of area we've got built out.
And in addition to the trails, so you said 21 different trails, I guess at all different levels of effort. Do you still have the common dinner on Saturday followed by an auction?
Yep, we have a dinner on Saturday. I'm still working the details with the vendor on that. My original vendor, backed out on me because they smelled more money from a big Notre Dame football party, so I have to get to a backup vendor. That's just my own problem. I think I got it fixed. But yeah, so the dinner Saturday night, a little behind the baseball, behind the scenes, you need to know about that. We have the dinner Saturday night, and then we have an auction. And every year, our sponsors, they're just so generous. They come in with so many. Last year, we had 2 full 8-foot tables mounted up with items to give away. And we gave them away as fast as we could, and it still took an hour and a half to get rid of everything on the table. I think everyone walked home with at least 2 things. It was a really exciting time because the vendors are so generous to our event, and I expect we'll have the same type of turnout again this year. So that's always exciting to get together in the big tent. Everyone kind of jokes and tells lies about how cool their truck was that day and how they never got stuck, and share stories, and we enjoy a little food, maybe a little beverages passed around. It's hard to tell, and it's a good night.
Yeah, I always enjoyed Pass Mars, so I'm looking forward to it this year. The RTV, is that one day or is it multiple days?
It's just the one day. We normally set it up Saturday afternoon, starts around 4 o'clock, though the time's not set in stone quite yet, but around the 4 o'clock time frame. Usually folks go out and hit the trails all day Saturday and then come in a little bit early in the Saturday afternoon. They make a pass through the RTV course. It's just one pass through about 10 gates. You get your score, and then you're done. We run about 60 or 70 trucks through it in the last couple of years. And then Rovers North keeps track of the scores, and they award prizes to the top 1, 2, and 3 drivers, or the cleanest trips through the 1, 2, for the top 3 drivers. And they usually give away some good Rovers North prizes. They'd sell off their catalog. And usually it's mostly for bragging rights, who can brag that they're the best driver at the MAR. And that's always fun.
So October 4 through 7, which is a Thursday through Sunday. And do you need to be off site by a specific time, or do people linger?
People normally start departing shortly after lunch. Most people are gone by 2 or 3. I got to go home, man. So I appreciate if everyone is gone by 5, because I can get home. I got to go to work on Monday. But we don't really chase people away. People stay. And in years past, because of the proximity of the fall calendar is so full with Land Rover events. One year we had a couple people stay over past Sunday because they were going to leave from Giles and head down to the Expo, which was down in North Carolina a couple days later. So they were trying to go between 2 events. So we let some people stick around. There's that option if they need it. But most people leave by about noon or 2 in the afternoon on Sunday. And to
register, do you need to register in advance, or can you register at the event?
I prefer you register in advance at our website, www.roav.org. If you register between now and September 14th, you get the early bird discount, which is $99, and you get everything you need, plus a free T-shirt. If you register after September 14th, you lose your free T-shirt, and it costs $120. Ooh. And what we're really trying to incent people is to register early, because it just makes my life easier to get head counts ahead of time, T-shirt orders ahead of time. I know a lot of folks it's a Land Rover story. I get it. Your truck may or may not be running come August 4th, and I've been in that boat myself. So if you're stuck and you don't want to register ahead of time, but you want to register on site, we have on-site registration. You'll just pay the $120 late fee and just get in that way, no problem.
And cash or credit? I assume you have credit capabilities being in the remote area, though?
Oh, absolutely. We got a little cell phone with a swiper on it, and we're all high tech, brother.
You're like a modern Land Rover.
Exactly.
Scary thought.
Yeah.
I always look forward to the Mar T-shirt. They're always so well done and very nice. So I'm looking forward to this year's.
We've got a great artist that helps us with that. If you're not really into driving on the trails, but you're really into hanging out in the area, there's a lot to do in the area that you can occupy yourself with. If you're like the scenic hikes there's the Cascades waterfall is about 3 miles from the Mar campground. It's about a 2-mile hike through the woods to a 66-foot tall waterfall on Big Stony Creek. It's it's a popular destination for the hikers and outdoor enthusiasts. If you're into the finer things, you could venture up to Mountain Lake Resort. Now, Mountain Lake Resort is about 7 miles from the camp on top of the mountain that we drive our Rovers on. And this is actually the hotel or the lodge that was used as the setting for Dirty Dancing. It was called Kellerman's Lodge in the movie Dirty Dancing, but it's actually Mountain Lake Lodge. And you can go up there and they have a little Dirty Dancing movie tour. I know John, you're a big Dirty Dancing fan, big Patrick Swayze lover. I know that's who you are.
Absolutely, yes. Secretly, Patrick Swayze all the way.
That's kind of a neat feature in the area as well. So they have tennis courts and swimming pools and fine restaurants and stuff up there on top of the mountain as well. So if you're into that type of thing, if you don't want to take a couple light drives, but don't push your truck too hard. I mean, you want to enjoy some finer things for the weekend, there's options in the area as well. So there's a couple things to do in the area besides just drive your truck in the woods.
What about food for the weekend if you're camping there? Is there on-site vendors in addition to the Saturday meal, or do you have to basically bring your own?
There's a vendor for Saturday night, and that's the only vendor we have on site. Most of our Mar campers, now it's not Muddy Chef, hats off to the Muddy Chef guys, but they do a really good job of doing some group cookouts down at the Mar. Most people bring their own food, and they go all out. I walk around on Saturday evening, try to meet everyone, shake their hand, and just make sure everyone's enjoying themselves. And I put on 10 pounds walking from campsite to campsite with all the great food people are off around every time. So most people buy food, bring it down there. They have a big camp out. They usually combine 3 or 4 groups together and make a kind of a big deal of it. If you show up and you're kind of missing supplies, there's a Walmart down the road, a super Walmart, about 6 or 8 miles down the road. You can pick up any supplies you need, food, batteries, or whatever. And there's a couple of I love these country gas stations that have gas and fried chicken. That's my favorite in the world. But there's a couple of these gas stations that are close by with these deli bars on them. That if you like gas station fried chicken, then there's some good stuff here. You can get food that way as well if you're not into cooking food at your campsite. But that's the only food vendor comes in Saturday night.
Quality, clearly, when you put gas station and chicken together. I'm sure that's quality food.
Well, yeah, because they deep fry it in diesel.
Yeah.
And what about ground fires? My favorite, the inspiration for the podcast is actually sitting around the campfire at a Mar.
Yeah, campfires are allowed. Ground fires are allowed. We ask people, clean up after themselves and make sure they bring their firewood. The only caveat is, of course, we are beholden to the laws of the state of Virginia. If we have a dry season and the fire marshal says so, there's a burn ban. We can't burn. But as soggy as this year's been, I doubt that's really a real possibility. So I'm almost guaranteed we're going to have clean slate here for ground fires, and everyone usually enjoys themselves. I just ask that when you get done, you pick your wood up, put it next to a tree or something, because I have to go mow the grass. When I mow the grass with Dad's lawnmower, I don't want to chop up your firewood when I go through in the fall of next year.
Is there a place to purchase firewood nearby?
You can get it from the gas stations, little bundles, but we normally have if you just take
along with your fried chicken.
Yeah, exactly. Come on.
Firewood and fried chicken.
The field backs up to a set of woods, and we have every year we have access to a pile of downwood that's been there for a while that we chop up. I'm not promising to cut you firewood, but I could probably show you where a pile of firewood's at for you to pick up or bring back to the campsite that's less than a quarter mile from your campsite. So firewood's really not a problem. Although one year it was raining, and one of our Mar regulars, Doug Crowther, saw that it was raining, figured all the wood would be wet. He called up off of Craigslist a firewood delivery guy, and the guy delivered a pickup truck full of firewood to the Mar just for him. And they sat there for the whole weekend and burnt a pickup truckload of wood, sitting around a fire, telling stories and lies and passing the bottle. They enjoyed themselves immensely. And that was a great idea for them. Mm-hmm. So that works out sometimes.
Well, David, so coming up in a short period of time, we wanted to get you on the show before MAR and for people to register. So if they go out to ROAV.org and pre-reg, you'll save yourself a few dollars and American dollars, and you also get guaranteed of getting a T-shirt. When you register, by the way, I just thought of this one, are you registering just yourself and the truck, or are you registering everybody that is attending? And you're
registering your vehicle and however many people you can put in your vehicle. If you want to bring an extra vehicle, there's a $25 extra vehicle fee. So if you want to bring 2 trucks and wheel both trucks, then you'd pay your one registration fee plus $25. If you have 50 people in your Land Rover or one, we just charge per truck.
And what if you're towing? You're bringing your Land Rover, but you're towing it in. Is that the one fee?
Yeah, the one truck on the trails.
Gotcha. So your basic registration is registration for the vehicle that you're taking off road.
Right.
A lot of people think that $99 or $120 is pretty expensive for the event. Just talking to you, I know there's a lot that goes behind that. Could you maybe explain to folks why it seems that the registration is such a high fee?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. The club management, club board, we wring our hands over this every year, and it's just how the numbers come together. For us to put on MAR, your registration costs cover the rental for the big top tent, the rental for the porta-johns. We have to do about $2,000 to $3,000 worth of property improvements every year to repair the damage that we do from last year and make improvements for the next year. And we have insurance on top of that as well for our event. And then there's a T-shirt in there as well for folks. So if you add all those things together, each of those items, they're about $15, $20 a person a piece for each of those items, and you get 4 or 5 items in there. And you see we're up to $100. It does seem like a lot of money, but we try to keep it as cheap as possible. We think it's pretty good value for the money compared. It's in line with other events,
and actually, I think it's a little bit cheaper than I remember it being a few years ago.
Yeah, we've been as high as 120, 150. Like I said, I've been pushing, and we're trying to keep the event accessible as possible to all people, all Land Rover enthusiasts. And I realize, for some guys that are driving the brand new Range Rover, maybe $100 isn't much, but for some guys driving a busted down series, maybe $100 is a little bit more. And I'm not making any disparaging comments about our club members, but you get the idea. Oh, yeah. It's just we're trying to keep it as cheap as possible to make sure it's inclusive as much as possible.
Plus, you have to consider that this is also kind of a private event, and the trails are not much used. If you go to an off-road park, yeah, you're going to pay less, but you're also you're going to be here on private land, and it's going to be very much controlled and not overly used. So there is a benefit to that extra funds that you have. Plus, you're with like-minded people, and having gone to these events, if something happens, there's people there to help you out. It does seem a lot, but I think you do get a lot for it, and it's not. Yeah. And it's not just what you specifically get because you get on property and you get the camp, but you're actually getting more than that. And being a private event.
Yeah, the trail maintenance I think is underestimated by a lot of folks unless they've come to the weekend and swung an axe or dragged a chainsaw through the woods. It's right. a lot of time, effort, and money to get the trails open back up every year, and that's the price you pay for having a private trail network that's just dedicated to the club.
Right, and even though they look great this year, by next year they'll be grown back up again.
Yeah, weeds and it's always fun the first weekend because you're driving with weeds over the windshield and you're pushing them down and you're thinking you know where you're going, and you find out when you go wrong pretty quick. But yeah, the weeds grow like weeds. It's crazy.
Yeah, nature is relentless.
It is.
Well, thanks very much, David, for coming on and giving us a preview of MAR, and I'll see you there.
Excellent. Thanks, guys, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Our guest this month for the Centresteer podcast is Graeme Aldous. Graeme has previously been on the show. We think number 10. Did we do any research, Harold, to confirm the number?
I'm looking at that right now, actually.
All right. His latest video project is called After Overland. It's exactly what it sounds like. His first video project that we had him on the show for was First Overland, and this is all about After Overland. So if you want to know more and see it on video from what Adam and Tim talked about on our show for show 60 and 61, this is like a video companion piece to it. Adam talked about After Overland was being created by Graeme, so this is now available. And since we recorded this with Graeme, which was about a month ago, he has now made the After Overland available on a streaming service, and that's Vimeo. We'll definitely have a link for you in the show notes. In the U.S., you can rent it for 6 months, streaming only, for $10.20. You can buy it for streaming and downloading, so you can have it available in electronic format for $19.15. And I realize you say, oh, it's on the internet and I don't want to pay $20 to have it or stream it. Graeme did do this, and I don't encourage anyone to download it and share it with other people without paying for it, because Graeme does this as a labor of love and documenting Land Rover's history. You go out and purchase it, and so you can watch it, especially if you're here in America or maybe you're somewhere else in the world. It's available all around the world. Your prices, of course, will vary based on your location. I believe in the UK it's £15 for the download and £8 for the renting, stream it only for 6 months.
I will at this time confirm that Graeme was indeed our guest on episode number 10 from January of 2014.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes. And if the After Overland does well on Vimeo and the streaming service, I suspect that would encourage Graeme to put his other titles up, which includes First Overland Stopgap.
And the LR65 Party, which is what he was pushing when he was on our show.
Nah, that's right. I thought he was pushing First Overland, but it was LR65.
It was. Yeah, and the other benefit of getting it online is instant gratification. You no longer have to wait for post from the UK to get your copy.
Although that is kind of cool, but yeah.
Oh, it's totally cool, and I would highly suggest paying for both.
There we go.
So then my question for you then is, if you get it from Vimeo, are you able to link that up to the crappy upgrade infotainment system in the new Disco?
If you want to watch it in slow motion.
While driving fast?
And now, Graeme Aldous.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, welcome, Graeme. Thanks for coming back on to the show. You were our very first podcast guest, and we really appreciate it. You hold a special place with us on the show because you took a chance to come talk to us on the podcast.
Somehow I think that means more to us than it does to Graeme, but that's okay.
Oh, I don't know. I am honored.
That's as a result, we're able to talk to you about your next DVD, which is After Overland. After Overland, of course, tells us the story of SNX 891 and also of, what's the Cambridge truck? SNX
761.
761. And I haven't memorized that one yet. So how did the DVD come about? I mean, I think we know how it came about, but how'd you get plugged into this and with all the right principles, of course?
Well, it's a long story, but it won't go as long as Adam Bennett has been known to talk to you.
And what happened next was?
When, as you're probably aware, Anthony Barrington Brown, who was the photographer for First Overland, the 1955 Oxford and Cambridge Far Eastern Expedition, London to Singapore, tragically, about 3 or 4 years ago, he and his wife were killed in a motor accident. When his family were clearing out the house, they came across a box of films, 16mm, 3 rolls of 16mm film, which, similar to the films that First Overland were on, these were labelled Back to Burma. And they said, wow, we would love to see what these films are. And they came to me, Chris Barrington Brown, and said, could I please have a look at this and maybe see whether or not there was a chance of putting them onto a DVD, as I did with First Overland. So I was obviously very, very happy to do that. The films were got to me. I got them transferred. And then I did what I did with First Overland was I tidied them up. I tidied up all the edits, which after 60 years were beginning to look visible because they were just done with film cement or with tape. And I did DVDs and let the family have all of those. But they had suggested that if I wanted to, I could do what I did with First Overland and turn it into a commercial DVD for other people to see, which of course, why not? Because, First Overland is still a fantastic story. This is what Tim and BB, Tim Slessor, who wrote the First Overland book, and BB did next. They went to Burma. Now, I have to say that the footage was interesting, but it wasn't another First Overland. It hadn't got the same storyline. Some of the material was a bit similar, because what had happened was, perhaps I ought to explain this. After he'd written the book and got it published, Tim Slessor went to work for the BBC radio. But then they were starting up schools television, And he thought, right, this would be a great opportunity. Why don't I move across into TV and do some TV programs? And he spoke to them, and they commissioned 2 programs, one about life in an Indian village and one about life on Lake Inle, which, of course, we do remember from the first Overland. It's this sort of semi-aquatic lifestyle where everybody lives in boats out in the Far East. But in order, they got that commission, they were told, go ahead, yeah. But in order to make it more financially viable, they went back to David Attenborough, who, of course, had commissioned the first Overland Traveller's Tales films, and said, would you like some footage? We hear that there's a white elephant been born in Burma. And David Attenborough said, yes, he thought that would be a great idea. So they went back to Burma, which is what it said on the box. Now, they weren't doing the journey for the sake of doing the journey like they were on First Overland. They were just getting to the Far East. So there was very, very little Land Rover interest footage. And the Indian village and the Lake Inle stuff we had really seen before. But there was some good stuff about the elephants. However, it was, as was First Overland, mute. There was no audio commentary or anything. And I was now faced with the sad problem that for First Overland, I interviewed Tim and BB looking at the film and talking about what they saw. I couldn't do that anymore because BB was no longer with us. So I put the box on one side, waiting for something to happen which would make it all feasible. And what happened was that Adam Bennett, of fame and note, you know his voice so well, had this mad idea of bringing the remains of SNX 891, the Oxford car, back from St. Helena. Everybody said it was impossible. To Adam Bennett, the word impossible does not exist. He's a Yorkshireman, he's cussed, he don't take no for an answer. And so this was what he was doing. And he got in touch with me and said, look, this container is arriving at my father's house in York, and I'd love you to come down and film it because Tim Slessor's coming and he's going to open the doors and we're going to see what's inside. And so that is what happened. And it was a very, very emotional moment for us all. Tim nearly burst into tears. I don't think he'll mind me saying that. And I managed to capture that. This is the journalist in me saying, I got him on the camera. And then I was sort of involved with the filming and not really too emotionally involved until I touched the side light on the top of the wing. If you remember, they had to move the side lights up onto the top of the wing so that they weren't obscured by the jerry cans. And when I touched that side light and thought, yep, this is it. This is my hero car from way back when I was a little lad of 11, 12 years old. And that was moving. Anyhow, we got all that footage. And then, of course, it went on. There were other things to do. We had to capture the rebuilding of Oxford at Blackpool 4x4 in York. And then Tim was going to come up and drive the car. And so I picked him up from York Station and took him through to Blackpool. And it wasn't registered for the road then. It still wasn't road legal, but there were farm tracks that we could drive on. And there was Tim Slessor driving his old car for the first time in 61 years. That was another great moment. And of course, by that time, I was well into this. I was hooked. We had to do the rest of the story. And now I knew that I had a DVD that I could make that people would be interested in. Oh, and wouldn't it be fun if we called it After Overland because of what happened to the cars after Overland? Then we could also say, what did Tim and BB do after Overland? Oh, yes, they did this journey out to Burma, and here's some footage of them on the journey driving through some gloopy mud, and here they are finding the white elephant and, yes, featuring elephants in Burma.
You did a great job. It's outstanding. You sent us a copy of the DVD. It's really cool.
It's very kind, John. Very kind.
Yeah. Let's not forget the third portion of the DVD, the little self-serving piece where you got to drive Oxford yourself.
Well, it was a make weight, wasn't it? You know, yes, but 5 minutes of me, yes, actually getting to drive the car and ad-libbing to a camera. Yeah, yes, it was good to be there.
Actually, I think that was my favorite part, I think.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
I like the piece about how it was a lifelong dream that you never knew you had.
Well, it's true. It's true. And I mean, I say to my great chagrin that when I made first Overland, when I first was given a VHS tape of the footage of first Overland, it had never, ever occurred to me. This is somebody who been working in broadcasting for 40-odd years, who's never thought to ask what happened to the film that BB took. And I was so amazed to find it still existed. So that's how I came in and got hooked on it. Of course, I was very, very lucky in that Adam Bennett lives just the other side of the North York Moors from me. He's about 50 miles away. And so it meant that I could go and film these things, because if he'd lived in Cornwall or the north of Scotland, then it just wouldn't have been feasible. But because it was so fairly close, I was able to keep in touch and go down and talk to Ben Stowe at that. And then, of course, once the car had passed its the MOT, we call it, it's the official test which all old vehicles have to have. It was, of course, the first MOT test that SNX 891 had ever had, because it left England before the MOT test was invented. So it passed its first test, first time at the age of over 60.
That's actually a nice little bit of trivia. I didn't realize that it predated MOT.
It did indeed. So then we got a group of Series 1 enthusiasts together and we drove over Rutland Rig, which is probably the longest unsurfaced road in England. It runs right across the North York Moors from south to north. And it was great, and a really sort of feeling that welcomed this car back into the Series 1 fold.
How does it drive?
One of the weirdest things for me is the handbrake's not in the right place. It has the early short handbrake, whereas my wife's Series 1 has the longer handbrake, more like they use in later ones, which sticks up from the floor. But I think largely because you can reach it with a seatbelt on, whereas the lower one down on the floor, the little short handbrake, you can't reach with a seatbelt on. It hasn't got seatbelts in it. It doesn't need them legally. How does it drive? Well, Adam has put a Roma Drive overdrive in it. I've never actually had it up to speed. I've only driven it, sort of manoeuvred it for photographic purposes and that. But it's a Series 1. It's noisy. It rattles. I've ridden in it quite a bit. Rode in it when we were over on Anglesey a few weeks ago for the big trip to Red Wharf Bay. There we had the Series 1 club managed to organise, I think it was 346 Series 1s parked on the beach at Red Wharf Bay, which is where Morris and Spencer Wilkes famously drew the outline of the Land Rover in the sand. And we had the Land Rover outline on the beach there. And Oxford is in there, up in the top right-hand corner near the top back of the roof.
I was always fascinated by the sunroof that was in that. Was that still work?
Oh, yes. When we were travelling to Red Wharf Bay, I was pretending to be BB and standing out of the hatch with my camera, filming. I've had too much on getting other things done, so I haven't actually done anything with that footage, but I might perhaps make a YouTube video out of it sometime, pretending to be me filming out of the hatch.
Of course, you're cheating because your camera uses batteries.
Yes. I didn't have a wind-up one like him. I can also shoot for longer than 30 seconds. So the next big thing that Adam wanted to do was really his launch of the car was at the Peterborough LRO, Land Rover Owners show. So that gave him a deadline, and he drove it down there along with Ben Stowe. And it's always amazed me. I mean, you'd think that a valuable car like that, one of the 10 most iconic Land Rovers in the world that's ever been, why take it down the motorways, the freeways of England, which are notoriously fast? You don't go at Series 1 speed easily. You get wagons trying to overtake you, trucks overtaking you. But, of course, the whole point is that, in actual fact, SNX 891 is probably in better condition than many Series 1s because it has just been rebuilt from scratch.
Yeah, it is mechanically new, after all.
It is indeed. Of course, we then had to find more things to do in the After Overland DVD. Adam took the car up to Peterborough in the Scottish borders on the 1st of October last year, because that was 60 years to the day that the car was unloaded on Ascension Island for the British Ornithologist Union expedition, which borrowed the car and never gave it back again from the Rover Company to go out there and support their expedition. And so Adam went up there. I couldn't go up on that occasion, but he borrowed one of my cameras and filmed Philip Ashmole, who was there on that day when the car was swung ashore 60 years beforehand. He filmed him driving it. Now, I've since been up and interviewed Philip, a proper interview, and perhaps I could just slightly divert here from a very, very weird occurrence. Your podcasts are commendably long. I don't often do long.
That's one way to
politely
put it.
Yeah. I don't often get the chance to do long car journeys, so I saved them for the car. And there I was driving up through Northumberland, over the border into Scotland and up through the Tweed Valley, listening to, first of all, Tim Slessor talking about his experiences on your podcast, and then Adam talking about his experiences, or the other way around. And now that was quite fun. But when we went to Anglesey, an island off the north coast of Wales, Adam wanted to leave Oxford behind for a journalist to borrow and write some stuff about and do some YouTube stuff. So I gave Adam a lift back to York. And he said, by the way, have you got the second podcast? Because I've never heard it. So I had it in my iPod, I put it on, and we drove round North Wales, round Manchester, over the Pennines, and this weird situation of hearing you guys talking to Adam, who was sitting beside me in the car. Now that is weird.
That would be strange.
Get him to tell the same story at the same time, and you could have like this funny stereo going on.
It would have been weird. I did learn an awful lot. I mean, I'd never had any idea that he wanted to take the car to Antarctica. That was news to me.
Right. Well, and the funny thing,
we want that to happen. We do.
Yeah, actually, we do. The funny thing about that is that we hardly ever spoke. I mean, so you really were listening to Adam.
we couldn't speak. We had no chance.
It's called getting away. That's why every now and then I pause to let you guys get a word in edgeways. You know, I've learnt my lesson.
It's all good. No.
Okay, but I'm going to carry on though, because the next thing was Adam is taking the car down to Southampton way, down to the south coast of England, because he's going to take it across to France, because there's no way he's going to let this thing just hang about in a garage in York. And I said, okay, if you're going near to Southampton, are you aware that Sally Stonehouse, who was also on Ascension Island, one of the team there, lives about 5 miles away from Chris Barrington Brown, BB's son? We've just got to take this opportunity and go and interview them. So that's what we did. I flew down and we all met in Chris Barrington Brown's garden and had a lovely interview with Sally, which you've seen, but she's telling us about driving the car there. The lovely occasion when her husband Bernard was driving down from the top of the mountain and driving very, very slowly down these 26 bends of this terrible mountain road. And everybody's saying, oh, come on, Bernard, come on, we want to get home, we want to get the tea on. And he said, no, this is fine, this is fine. And when he got to the bottom, he said, actually, I was driving that slowly because the brakes failed. But also, you see, for Chris, it was the first time he'd seen his father's car, because I don't know his exact age, but I don't think he was born when... No, he wasn't born. I know he wasn't born when they all came back from Singapore. And so the car had gone off to Ascension Island before he was born. So he had never seen Oxford before. And so he had a chance to ride in it and drive in it. And that was great. That was great, too.
Did all the family of all the members know about this story? Or was it something that, you know, now that you did the DVD and the truck has come back, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I didn't realize that my father or my uncle, you know, was on this iconic journey?
Well, Chris did say that Yeah, they grew up with the idea of this had happened in the past. He said the house, his father's house, was full of artifacts. I visited his BB's house, and yes, it's true, there were sort of various bits from the travels which were hanging up on the wall. So the family were well aware of it, but, they hadn't actually been able to share it in the same way, although Chris did say that it gave them the knowledge that travel was something good and worthwhile and fairly easy to do.
The family members did kind of grow up with the story. That's good to hear. I was always kind of curious about that because it seemed to, really until your DVD and me getting into Land Rovers, I really didn't know about the story at all. I subsequently learned that Tim wrote the book, and then.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is that, of course, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that Tim Slessor's book is still regarded as one of the best travel books ever written. And although it had gone out of print, it was still very much in people's knowledge that this book existed, which was why Signal Books chose to republish it in a paperback edition for the 50th anniversary of First Overland. So it had never really gone away. And having read since one or two other unpublished books about exploration and other journeys that have been done, I can see why Tim's book was published and is still published. It was a cracking good book. Of course, one thing about Adam is that I don't know if he ever gets any work done because he always seems to be doing tireless research. And also, of course, I must pay tribute to Peter Galilee, who is on the writing staff of Land Rover Owner magazine. And really, it was Peter that had done more research than anybody else about the fate of Oxford and Cambridge. And Peter had opened the doors to St. Helena through getting in touch with Bruce Salt, who is Land Rover great enthusiast out there, knows every Land Rover on the island and all its chassis numbers and part numbers and everything. And so I think I can't remember if it was, I think it was Peter who came across David Millard. Now, David was an apprentice at Lode Lane in the Land Rover factory. Because it wasn't Land Rover, it was in the Rover factory in those days. And he remembered the two cars coming back from Singapore and being paraded, he said, in the canteen. I don't know if they did actually drive them in through the doors and bring them into the serving counter or whatever. But everybody from Rover was introduced to these two wonderful cars which had been to Singapore and back. And, of course, let's not lose sight of the fact that that was an important thing for Rover because it had introduced the cars to a wider world and shown that they were perfectly capable of doing 36,000 miles around some pretty inhospitable country. So there again, you see, it was an absolute must. I had, once we knew about David, his existence, he was happy to be interviewed. So we went to Lode Lane and I interviewed him outside the front door of the famous B block, which was the Rover Company's offices. So that was a lovely little extra. And then suddenly one day, got a phone call from Adam saying, "You're not going to believe this. You know that little lad with the Brownie 127 Kodak camera in Singapore when they all arrived at Champion Motors in Orchard Road?" I said, yeah, I remember him. Little curly-haired lad with a camera, fresh-faced. What about him? Well, he lives in North Lincolnshire, here in England. And as those of you who've seen the DVD will know, although he's 60 years older, he is still entirely recognisable as that little lad with the camera. So Adam, who has some great ideas, he went on eBay and he found a Brownie 127 camera, the same camera, and he and I went down to Lincolnshire and we interviewed Harold, and he remembered being there. And the reason why he was there in the crowd was that it was his mother who organised the event because she was the personal assistant to the managing director of Champion Motors. And so gradually we filled in all these little gaps. It had been Oxford, was last seen in First Overland, and then bye-bye Oxford, it went to Ascension Island and St Helena and rotted away, and that was it, never see it again. But no, we filled in all the gaps because we found somebody who'd seen it in Solihull. We'd seen somebody who drove it, two people who drove it on Ascension, and so it went on like that. And I always say that the best things, the best programs produce themselves. I found this on radio and television over 40 years, that sometimes I'm just the enabler. I'm not actually doing much creative. I'm just helping all the things to come together. And then my job is to put them together in a logical way.
Sounds a little bit like the podcast. We give a microphone to someone to tell the story like we did Adam, and off he goes. Yeah.
Indeed.
And actually, you are also part of the story. I mean, the reason, as you said, you found people who saw the truck in its original version. You saw the truck when it was departing the UK.
I saw Cambridge. I saw the other one.
Oh.
I never saw Oxford.
I thought you saw them both
now
together.
I am one of the few people in the world who has seen both cars. It was 61 years apart.
So you were
It's okay.
What, you were what, 9 years old, and did you?
It was just before my 12th birthday.
Right. Oh, 12th birthday. And did you know what was happening, or was that?
Oh no! I'd just gone down into our local high street to do some shopping for my mum, and this Land Rover went past, and it was sign written, London, Oxford and Cambridge, Far Eastern Expedition, London to Singapore. I was absolutely thrilled with it, and it did mean that when the first Overland book came out in my father's book club selection, came through the post, I said, wow, that's that car that I saw, 2 years ago. And, well, I've been with Land Rovers ever since.
So that was the moment that turned you into a car guy then?
Turned me into a Land Rover guy, most certainly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It must be said. Yeah. We should talk about Cambridge, actually, SNX 761. And this was another thing that managed to get into the After Overland DVD to complete the story as much as we can. When the two cars came back to Rover, they they used them for promotional purposes for a short while, but then the Series 2 came out, with the different styling, the different barrel size and that. And I think, to put it quite bluntly, as far as I can work out, the publicity department didn't really want to promote the Series 1 anymore. They'd got a new baby. No matter what Oxford and Cambridge had done, they were now old hat. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but, that's how I feel it is.
I don't think you are. So, I don't think you are.
They said, right, we don't need these cars anymore. Cambridge was in better condition of the two, so it was sold to a dealership. Oxford, as we know, was virtually given to, it was loaned to, indefinite loan, and never came back to Ascension Island. But Cambridge, 761, went to this dealership, and some explorers from young people, young students, again from Oxford, they wanted an expedition car to go out to the Far East. And they found this car and were told, it had got a good provenance, it's already been to Singapore and back. So they used it to go out to the Far East. Now, this wasn't an expedition in the way that Trans-Americas, Trans-Africa, First Overland had been. They were just using the car as transport. But when it time for the official owner of the car, the man whose name was on the logbook, the title as you would call it in America, a chap called Terence Bendixson, he was driving the car back home to England, and he was somewhere in what was then Persia, now Iran, somewhere between there and Turkey. And he was driving at night because it was so much cooler than driving in the day. And he says he doesn't know what happened. Did he fall asleep? Did he just misjudge? But one way or another, the car went off the edge of the road and down into a ravine, and he was quite badly hurt. And fortunately, the headlights stayed on, and they pointed up in the sky, and a border guard came, saw the headlights and thought, oh, a car's come to grief, came and found him, rescued him. He was invalided out, never saw the car again. I made the rather tactless mistake of asking him if he had any photographs of him and his colleagues on their expedition. And he said, rather tight-lipped, if I had had a camera, it was in the car at the bottom of the ravine, wasn't it? So no photographs exist that I could put in. But there we are. The car ended up at the bottom of the ravine. What happened to it? Nobody knows. Wow. Now, if it wasn't too smashed, it could be that somebody pulled it out of the ravine, got it back on the road. It was driving around. But it must be said, and here we were talking to an Iranian when we were at Anglesey. An enthusiast had come over. Well, he lives in England now, but we were talking about this, and Adam was asking him, well, what's the chance of us finding it? And he said, well, no, they've recently had a scrappage scheme in Iran to take old vehicles off the road. And particularly in the climate that exists there, and I mean the political, social climate, vehicles belonging to America and the UK were perhaps not quite as popular as those who came from other countries. And so the likelihood of a British Land Rover of 62 years old being on the road is virtually nil. So I don't think we will ever see Cambridge. But there in the Grenadier pub, which is where the first Overland team set off on the 1st of September 1955, a pub in the near central London, near Hyde Park Corner, there I met Terence Bendixson and interviewed him for his memories about driving Cambridge and coming off the road. Mercifully, he's okay. He had terrible leg injuries, and as he says, if it hadn't been for that border guard, he would almost certainly have lost his leg if he hadn't actually been killed. But there we are. It did also mean we could wrap up a little bit more of the whole after Overland story.
Now, Adam told me something interesting in his interview about that particular experience. He said that this gentleman had been longtime friends with, I think, Nigel, but Indeed. Nigel was completely unbeknownst to him that he knew that this gentleman had this accident, but had no idea it was in his old truck.
Exactly. And at that meeting at the Grenadier with Terence and with Tim and Pat Murphy and Nigel Newbury, there was a lot of good-natured leg pulling going on, saying, oh, you're the man that killed our car, But it is weird, isn't it, that after all these years, it took 60-odd years for them to discover that they had been at college together in Oxford.
I'd like to go back to a point about the Oxford truck being an Ascension, because just thinking about this. If it was loaned by JLR, which is now JLR, is technically the Oxford truck still owned and the property of Land Rover? And how did Adam get around that when it came back into the country? Or was it, like, at this point become scrap or salvage and finders keepers?
I think the answer to that is that it was formally given or sold for $1. I don't know. I haven't been able to establish this. But it did officially go to Mervyn March, who worked for Cable and Wireless, who had a relay station there, and he drove the water bowser that kept Cable and Wireless staff supplied with water, and incidentally, the British Ornithologists Union camp supplied with water. As I understand it, although not at first hand, when they said we'd like, what do you want us to do with the car? Rover said, well, we don't need it. We don't want it back. It's not worth bringing it back. Find someone who's been useful to you and give it to them. And they certainly said that Mervyn March, it was useful to him. So I think it can be said that it passed officially to him and that Rover and its successors, JLR, have no title interest to it. Then Mervyn, he actually worked on Ascension, but came from St. Helena. Many St. Helenas work on Ascension. He half cannibalised the car when it started to get a little bit unreliable. He bought an 88-inch station wagon and transferred the hard top and various other bits. But when he retired from Cable and Wireless and went back to St Helena, he took the wreck with him as well as his car. He took 1.5 cars back because, of course, on islands, spare parts are very, very valuable. And that is how the back half, the tub and the engine and gearbox and that of Oxford was saved. They were bulldozed into the hillside on St Helena when a road was being put through. And the car now belonged to Mervyn's niece Gloria and her husband Eric, Gloria and Eric Leo. And it was Eric Leo who said, with the great help of Bruce Salt, yes, Adam, you can have the remains, but I want a Defender, a young Defender, to replace my old one. I don't want a modern one because you need computers, and the nearest computer is across the sea, 2,000 miles away in Johannesburg. So he says, I want a basic one with a TDI engine in it, which we can repair with the technology that we have here on the island. So in a way, it was a no-brainer for Eric because, he gave away this pile of scrap and got a good quality running Defender in its place. What's not to like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it works great for him.
And it leads me to another question about Land Rover. Have they expressed any interest in SNX 891 to either assist or, give it to... I know they took it to the 70th anniversary celebration, but anything more beyond that?
Not that I'm aware of. You'd need to ask Adam about that. He hasn't told me that they're doing that. Perhaps I'm being a little harsh if I say that JLR are very interested in their heritage when it suits them.
I think that's
again. I may be being harsh, but
no, I think that's accurate.
I think you're right on.
No, I think that's very accurate to say, and that fits in. I think with modern JLR. That's. I mean, I actually would even go a little further to say that if McGovern got his way, I don't think they would talk about heritage at all. I think there's probably other people in the company that say you have to respect it.
I think if McGovern got his way, people would be out rounding up all the old ones.
Doing a scrappage scheme like in Iran, yes.
So, federal government, with black tactical uniforms and automatic rifles.
We want your car. We were taking your car.
Gee, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So you may say that. I, of course, couldn't possibly comment.
Yeah, so the Grenadier Pub, being a pub person, and I like pubs, especially in the UK, so I now have put the Grenadier Pub on my list of pubs to visit in the UK. How long has it been? Any idea of its history? Has it been around a long time? And have other expeditions started from there? Is it like an expedition hub?
I don't think so, no. It was originally the officers' mess of the British Grenadiers, the Grenadier Guards. So that's how it got that name once it was turned into a pub. It is, I asked Tim this, why did you start from there? And he said, I'm not really sure, but don't forget that Hyde Park Corner, and that's very, very nearby, is where traditionally mileages from London have been measured. So if you say, I live 300 miles from London, you actually say, I live 300 miles from Hyde Park Corner. And that is the nearest pub to that. And he thinks, somebody suggested it for that reason. It's a strange little place. It's down a dead-end street. And so it doesn't get any vehicles going past. It's very quiet. It's very quaint. If you see the DVD and you see the Terence Bendixson interview, on the wall behind his head there are it says Inkerman one side and Gallipoli, I think, and the whole pub is sort of dedicated to memorabilia of the Grenadier Guards, and it is quite a place. You really should go to it. But there is another tale. And that is that it is also the local pub of a chap called Jim Ratcliffe, who has recently been declared as the richest man in Britain. He runs a chemical company called Ineos, and he's an entrepreneur. He does a lot of the stuff of that, chemicals, refineries, and that. But he is a Defender driver. He absolutely loves his Defender. And when it was announced that there were not going to be any more Defenders, he got really upset. And he actually said to JLR, well, can I have the rights to carry on building the Defender? And JLR said, over our dead body, and actually went as far as copywriting the silhouette of the Defender, so that even if anybody did want to try to build it, they wouldn't be allowed to build it the same shape, because that's now copyright. Anyhow, Jim and his team, and I have met one or two of them, have this idea that they will rebuild something to replace the Defender. They're not bothered about what plans JLR have got, because they don't believe, and many of us don't believe, that it's going to be anything like a replacement for the traditional series Defender type Land Rover. He wants to try to do something. He wants to build it in this country because he's very, very strong British supporter. He supports the leaving the EU, the Brexit. He wants to build here. I have said to one of his team, well, the perfect place, of course, is up here in the northeast of England, where I live, because we're a bit of a rust belt, part of the UK. We've got the steel industry up here has died. We've got a very skilled workforce who haven't got any work. We're also very near to the Nissan factory in Sunderland, so there is a big infrastructure of providing parts for the motor industry, and you must consider building your car, which they're going to call probably, almost certainly, the Grenadier, because of where the idea came from, and it's also a very, very good name for it. You must build it in the northeast of England. Now, I've since read things in the business press that say, yes, no matter how much you may want to do that, to set up a car building factory from scratch is going to cost so many £billion, let's say for round figure £10 billion. In Germany and Belgium, there are mothballed car assembly plants which you could possibly commission for £3 billion. So clearly, the bean counters, the accountants are going to have their financial look into this. I know Jim Ratcliffe doesn't want to build his Grenadier, we'll call it that, outside Britain, but who knows, he may have to. But there we are.
It seems to me, though, that there's probably some mothballed factory space that could be refitted pretty easily. The Defender's not a difficult vehicle to build if you're going to do something similar to what was there originally. You don't need a very specifically tailored factory to do that.
No. Now, I'm sure that Ineos Automotive, as they're now, that branch is now called, will, looking into all of this. Their website, by the way, is projectgrenadier.com, but it is spelt in the German way, Projekt, not CT, Project Grenadier, all one word, .com. I checked it just before we started this interview. It's still there. You can see Jim Ratcliffe. Very strangely, they have some Mitsubishis demonstrating driving through mud, which is really rather weird, and I'm not honestly sure why they do that, but there are Defenders in it, most certainly.
Maybe that's where their Centresteer prototype is coming from?
Yes.
You need something else to build a prototype from if you want to stay with tradition.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yeah. So we should keep an eye on that. But it is rather weird, isn't it, how everything goes round in circles. That first Overland left from the Grenadier, and if there is a successor to Defender, which is not built by JLR but built by Ineos, then that had its beginnings in the Grenadier in Bayswater. And I'm sure, John, if you go there, get off at Hyde Park Tube Station, walk a couple of blocks, find your way up this dead-end street, go into the bar and say, my name is John, I'm from America, and I love Land Rovers. Well, if there's any Project Grenadier people in, they'll welcome you warmly. But, yeah.
It sounds to me like the Grenadier Pub is just an important place for important people to plan important things.
It is indeed.
Well, it looks like I need to get to the Grenadier Pub then. That's on my list now when I get to the UK.
Yes, indeed.
It's now an important part of Land Rover history. Graeme, thanks for coming back on the show, talking about, and actually, more importantly, thanks for doing the work that you've done to keep, what I think is probably the most famous Land Rover vehicle now, the Oxford truck, and keeping it in people's hearts and minds, and being able to see it and experience it and understand it. So thanks for everything that you did, and thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much indeed.
And where can folks get After Overland, and also, for that matter, go back and get First Overland if they're not familiar with the original?
Right. Okay, then. Well, I have a dedicated website, www.afteroverland.co.uk. The details are on there. First Overland. Oh, I don't think I've got a site that says First Overland Co.uk, because that had already gone. You have to go. Yeah. Well, look. Go to Afterland Co.uk and sort of follow things through from there.
You can link back to the First Overland from the After Overland site.
I'm sure if you can't, I will make sure that you can for you. Yeah.
Good.
And one thing that particularly of interest to your North American, Canadian, and maybe Japanese listeners as well is that I've now discovered that my new editor allows me to make NTSC versions which suit your TV system. Now, so it means that After Overland is available in PAL and NTSC. And I'm also hoping, I haven't actually done this yet, but I'm wanting now to get to do NTSC versions of the other two, the Stopgap DVD, which is the Arthur Goddard story, and also the one that we celebrated the 65th anniversary of Land Rover at Packington Hall LR65. I'll probably only burn those to special order, so I might not be able to get one into the mail the moment an order comes in. But I'm pleased. It's always been a bit of a problem that I couldn't really offer them with a hand on my heart to North America unless you took a chance on them not playing quite right. But I think now I've overcome that. So
that's certainly what I wanted to hear, because I went to your website to order the new DVD and it said it was only available in PAL, and my heart sank. And then you teased me by sending an advance copy to John in NTSC, and I was hoping you were going to say that they are now available that way.
Well, I haven't actually changed the website yet, but that'll be my next job.
Well, good. They are available, and it looks great. It's about 45 minutes with two little extras tacked onto it. You can see the glee in your face as you are driving the Oxford truck. I think that was probably worth the price of admission. It was really cool. I was there. I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is really cool. And check out you'll have links. We'll have links in our show notes to After Overland, to your website for your other DVDs, because you've done First Overland, you've done LR65 for the 65th anniversary, which we talked about on the first time you were on the show. Was it 65 or 7? No, this is 70.
65.
So yes, 65. Yeah. You had just done the 65, so it has been about 5 years. And then what else? And then is there another Land Rover one to my
Stopgap, which tells the story of Arthur Goddard, who is, of course, the last surviving member of the original team. He was the one that took the Wilkes Brothers drawings and made them into aluminium and steel and made them run. And the midwife of the Land Rover, marvelous man.
Yes.
So you've got enough of these out now that you could now do a Tia Fit special edition box set.
It's tempting, I must admit. It is tempting.
And have you considered doing anything online, doing any streaming activities? Because, a lot of folks even... I think Land Rover people still have DVD players, but I think there's a new generation that does, what's a DVD?
I think some Land Rover people still have Betamax players. Yes, I have considered it, but the straight answer is that the people who host these things, they charge about £75 a month. Now, I don't know what that is in dollars, but it's a lot of dollars.
That is.
It's too many.
A month per title. And I've looked into
That's a lot.
and yeah, it's a lot of money. That, and whilst obviously we know that there's a lot of Land Rover enthusiasts around the world, at the same time it is niche. It's more niche than something really big like Game of Thrones or something that might go on Netflix or something like that.
Right.
So I've looked into it, but the beans don't add up.
Well, I know people like the streaming, but to my mind, if I'm going to spend the money, I really like having the thing I can hold in my hand, and I like the experience of inserting it into the machine and watching the magic come out of it.
You quaint old-fashioned person, you, but I agree with you. It's good to hear. You're a man after my own heart.
If I could find a DVD player with a hand crank on the side, I would own it.
You sound like a Land Rover owner.
Yeah, just don't get your thumb in the way of the crank in case it kicks back.
Well, yeah, there would be that. Don't get your face in the way either, because you could break a jaw.
Are you working on any new projects, Graeme? Anything else? Anything coming up? Nope.
No. It's our village show in about a month's time, and I run the show. And I spent so much time doing After Overland that I have neglected to get the show program done. So in my spare moments, I'm trying to get that done as well. So just before we started this recording, I was ringing all my advertisers and saying, "You will take an advert in the schedule, won't you?"
One last question before you go, Graeme, if you don't mind. John sounds like he's shoving you out the door, but I want to know, you talked about your personal fleet last time you were on the show, but time has passed. Has the fleet grown, shrunken, changed?
No. It's still SXF 870, my wife's ex Civil Defence Series 1. Tomorrow I'm taking it to a rally, a steam engine rally, a steam locomotive traction engine rally over in the Yorkshire Dales. And Adam is going to be bringing Oxford. And I always go to that one because when they do the parade in the ring at about 4 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon, I'm the one who has the microphone and I do all the spieling and telling everybody what's happening. Tomorrow's going to be a great one because I'm going to ask Adam to stay behind and I'm going to talk to the people about the car and the story. And then I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the 10 most iconic Land Rovers ever built, and I hope he'll drive into the ring and everybody will go ooh and ah, and it's going to be a great day. And the rest of the fleet is just the Freelander 2, LR2, I think you call it in America, don't you? Which is looking more bent and battered and filthy as time goes on. I'm quite ashamed of it.
He says proudly.
It makes it look as though it's a used Land Rover. I have to keep it filthy to merit the green oval badge on the front.
Well, the best Land Rovers are used Land Rovers.
Yeah, doing something. I think we have your next DVD, Graeme. You just said it, the top 10 Land Rover icons.
Yeah, okay, well, there we are. There's a competition for you to do on Centresteer podcast. Name your top 10. Try to come up with a definitive one. I'm going to say it has to be Huey, of course. Huey. It has to be Pollyanna. Right. It has to be Oxford and Cambridge. Having once ridden in one of the Darien Gap Range Rovers, that has to be in there as well, one of those. But then, yeah, let's hear perhaps from a British point of view, the 110 that Bob Ives and his brother won the Camel Trophy in one time, the only time that the UK's won the Camel Trophy. That will be in my list. But there we are. There's a competition for you. Name your top 10 Land Rovers.
I'd have to be a little bit controversial here, but I want to throw a disco into the ring. The Camel Trophy discos are iconic for what they've done for the Discovery.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, go on.
I'm writing down notes. We came up with 6 so far. That's if you put the Oxford and Cambridge together as one, which I think.
Yeah.
Although I guess you could. But there we go. Well, maybe that's what
they are collectively one icon, I think.
Yeah. Well, we can come up with 10 of them, and then we'll have Graeme come up with a DVD that talks about all of them and has a nice little. This is the the icons of the mark.
I'm not making any promises.
We're trying to give you more work. Come on.
Yes, because that's, I'm sure, what he wants.
Yes.
My wife would much rather I did work around the house.
Well, that sounds like a good exit line. Well, we should let you go so you can do work around the house and work on the what is it? The town what? What do you guys call it?
The village show.
The village show. What is it? Okay, what's a village show? I was going to let you go, but what's the village show? I don't think we do those here.
Once a year, we do this in our village hall. It's to raise money to support the village hall. And we have baking competitions, and we have art competitions, and we have farmers competitions for the best hay and the biggest turnip. And we have children's art and all this sort of thing. And it's a grand day out.
Nice.
It's hard work, though.
So like one of our county fairs, but
it's like
a
county fair, only much, 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 much smaller, because there's only 400 people live in the village.
So everybody gets a prize just for showing up then, pretty much. Huh?
No, we can't afford that. They get a grand day out.
There you go. Thanks again, Graeme. Appreciate it. You're always welcome back to talk about anything you want, even if it is the village show.
Very kind of you. Thank you guys very much indeed.
Yep, you may now resume your important things.
And that's the show for August 2018. I want to thank our guest this month, Graeme Aldous, for talking about his latest video project, After Overland. Don't forget to go out and support Graeme in this quality project he did with After Overland, so you can now see what Tim and especially Adam talked about on the show. You can actually see it now by watching After Overland. After Overland, in addition to being available on his website, which we'll have a link to in the show notes in DVD form, you can now also get that specific title available in a streaming format on Vimeo.com. Also want to thank David Short for joining us and talking about MAR for 2018. Don't forget to go out and register before you go so you can assure yourself of getting a T-shirt. And I want to thank Harold and Morgan for joining us on the show. Again, thank you all, gentlemen.
Yeah, well, $10 is $10.
And thanks to the One True Packs for his continued production support. Also, thanks to Alloy and Grit for being part of our Wilkes Toast giveaway. Check the website for details. We want to make sure it's coming to a conclusion here very quickly on September 7th, so we'll pick winners on the next show. Visit our website, Centresteer.com, that's CENTRE, to listen to previous shows and for show notes, which have links to stories discussed in today's show. We're part of the 4x4 Radio Network, and I invite you to check out the other 4x4 related shows at 4x4radionetwork.com. I know Dan Cole is gearing up to have a new show soon, so you want to go check that out. You can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can directly support the show at patreon.com/Centresteer. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. You'll get the show automatically to whatever podcatcher you use. I personally use Overcast. You may use iTunes or some other one, but it just looks good. We don't get anything for it, but it makes sure you get the show. And a shout out to everybody from the last show. I was on vacation. I had posted the show, went on vacation, only to find out that I had mistitled the show name, the file name, and I had left a dash in the file name, and that's why the show was not available to everybody until I went in and removed the dash. That's all that was. So thanks, everybody, for letting me know about that.
Yeah, a whole lot of unhappy 404 errors out there.
Yes, there were. Patreon subscribers also get early access to our updates from the Bells. We're going to get them back on the show here soon. They're about ready to head back into Africa. We're going to get an update from them. And Patreon subscribers get access to the expedition entries for 1 month before they become available to everybody else. Thanks for listening to show number 65. I hope you enjoyed it. We'd love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover. Until next time, I ask you to share the show with one other Land Rover enthusiast.
You may now resume your important things.
Your podcasts are commendably long.